Hello and welcome to another amazing part of What If Deku Had the Power of Rogue? Chosen One 123 wrote this amazing story. Please support them. Don't forget to like, sub, and leave a comment. Now let's dive in. The Principal Nizu's office. The office was quiet, save for the tick of the clock. Izuku sat across from Nizu's desk, gloves on, posture straight. His expression wasn't guilty. It was calm. Certain. Midoriya, he began softly, today you saved Aizawa and Hikari. Without you the outcome might have been much darker. That deserves recognition. Izuku nodded, voice low but firm. I'd do it again. Every time. Nizu's ears twitched faintly. And yet, you understand the way you did it was unsettling. Your classmates saw terror, not triumph. Even the staff were shaken. But, he paused, weighing his words carefully, I am not naive. I know defeating that Nomu might only ever have been possible by going as far as you did. So we're prepared to give you the benefit of. I could have let go, Izuku interrupted quietly. Nizu blinked. Izuku's eyes didn't waver. If I'd released the Nomu sooner, it would have passed out. Maybe even stayed down long enough for All Might or someone else to capture it. Izuku quickly looked at his hands. I felt it stop struggling, he said. I chose not to stop. Taking a deep but firm breath, Izuku kept going. I wasn't taking that chance. Not with Hikari in its path. Not with Aizawa already down. I wanted the fight ended. Decisively. The words were plain, not defiant. A simple explanation. That made them heavier. For the first time, Nizu's smile faded. His gaze sharpened. You understand what you're saying, Midoriya? That you chose finality over restraint. Izuku nodded. Yes. Because hesitation gets people killed. The principal sat back, paws steepled, studying the boy's steady expression. That conviction will either make you the kind of hero who changes the world, or the kind of figure the world fears and calls villain. Izuku's jaw tightened. If being a hero means hesitating while someone I care about dies, then I can't be that kind of hero. For a long moment, Nizu studied him, sharp eyes glinting in the light. Then he tilted his head. You've changed, you know. You don't look like a boy who lived on the streets anymore. You look fed, rested, stronger. Izuku blinked at that, caught off guard. Nizu continued, his tone careful. Absorbing the Nomu's quirk seems to have accelerated things. Even without inheriting its raw strength, your body looks more conditioned, as though its resilience pushed you forward. You even grown a couple of inches in height. To some, that will look like growth. To others, it will look like someone dangerous sharpening his claws. Izuku's hands curled faintly into fists, but he didn't look away. Then I'll prove the difference. I'll show them I'm not dangerous for its own sake. That I can control it. Nizu's smile was faint, but his gaze razor sharp. Control will be everything, Midoriya. Because power without it isn't heroism. It's chaos. He tapped his claw lightly on the desk. One more question. The Nomu you touched had more than one quirk. Do you still carry them? Izuku flexed his gloved hands, feeling the hum beneath his skin. Yes. Shock absorption. Regeneration. Not its strength, that was just its body. But the quirks themselves, they're mine now. Then the question is simple. What will you do with them? Izuku's voice was steady, almost too steady. Save people. Always. The principal's eyes gleamed, tail curling behind him. Yes. Whatever is necessary. Izuku's throat bobbed, but his voice stayed calm. I'll save people, no matter what it takes. For a long moment, the only sound was the quiet hiss of Nizu's tea cooling on the desk. Then Nizu smiled again, faint, sharp, and knowing. Very well. Let us see if you can. UA dorms, late night. The dorm room was quiet, shadows stretching across the desk where Izuku's notebook lay open. He sat on the edge of the bed, hunched forward, gloves still on, sleeves tugged low, his head buried in thought. Shock absorption. Regeneration. His mother's pull. 3 quirks that weren't his but now lived under his skin. Nizu's words kept circling, not very hero-like, dangerous, whatever it takes. Izuku stared at his hands, flexing them slowly. They didn't look monstrous. They didn't look like killers. But he knew what they had done. What they could still do. A soft knock jolted him. He tensed, heart kicking. Come in. The door cracked open. Hikari stepped inside, her arms still wrapped in fresh bandages, her hospital bracelet barely cut loose. She smiled faintly, her eyes tired but bright. Thought you'd still be awake. Izuku blinked, caught completely off guard. Hikari? You should be resting. Before he could finish, she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. Izuku froze. Every muscle in his body locked as she pulled him close, her chin brushing his shoulder. His layered hoodie and gloves kept them apart, but the warmth seeped through anyway. His breath stuttered, his eyes wide. Why? His voice cracked in confusion. Hikari held on tighter. Because you saved me. You saved Dad. You saved all of us. And no one's thanked you yet. Izuku's throat closed. He wanted to raise his arms to hug her back, but all he could manage was a flinch, his body too unpracticed, too unused to touch. His hands hovered awkwardly in the air before he let them fall back to his sides. It's okay, Hikari murmured, sensing his hesitation but not letting go. I'm not afraid of you. Izuku's chest clenched hard. 4 years without real contact. 4 years of whispers. Dangerous, monster, villain in the making. And now, this. Izuku slowly wrapped his arms around her and gave her a soft hug back. They stayed like that for a minute, and Izuku cherished every second of it. When she finally stepped back, her green-gold eyes searched his face. Whatever they say about you, I know who you are. Izuku swallowed hard, his voice raw. Then I'll keep proving you right. For the first time since the USJ, the weight in his chest eased, just a little. Hospital wing next day afternoon. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and old coffee. Aizawa lay half-propped in a hospital bed, swathed in bandages, his scarf folded on the chair beside him. His face was pale, his eyes tired but sharp as ever. All Might sat near the window, arms crossed tight over his chest. He was in his true form, eyes lost as he was deep in thought. Nizu stood at the foot of the bed, teacup in paw, his voice as calm as ever. Midoriya told me something yesterday after the battle, Nizu began, tone deliberate. He knew he could have released the Nomu sooner, let it collapse unconscious. But he chose not to. He wanted the fight ended. Decisively. The silence that followed pressed heavy on the room. Aizawa exhaled slowly through his nose, his eyes narrowing. So he already understands mercy isn't in his vocabulary. At least not yet. All Might's hands clenched tighter across his arms. He killed the Nomu when he didn't have to. That's not a child's instinct. That's the mindset of a villain. Nizu tilted his head, watching them both. Or it's the instinct of someone who has lived too long with uncertainty. Aizawa? The bedridden hero shifted, wincing as the bandages tugged at his ribs. I think he's a boy who's had every safety net ripped out from under him. Quirkless. Abandoned. Treated like a weapon the day his powers showed. He doesn't trust anyone else to keep himself and others safe. Yes, that's dangerous, but it's also honest. If we don't put structure around him, he'll keep making those choices alone. I'll train him myself. Teach him restraint isn't weakness. Nizu's whiskers twitched. A measured answer. All Might slammed a fist against the windowsill, the metal rattling. Measured. If he can steal quirks, if he can kill with a touch, he's a threat to everyone here. Students, staff, civilians. You don't understand, Shota. I fought a man like that. I fought all for one. And if this boy drifts even an inch, we'll be staring at another monster. Aizawa's voice dropped, low but firm even as pain edged it. He's not all for one. He's a kid. A kid who's been tossed aside until violence was the only thing left that listened. If you treat him like a villain, that's exactly what you'll get. I won't let that happen. All Might's shadowed eyes burned. Or maybe we can't afford the risk at all. Nizu sipped his tea calmly, unbothered by the tension. Two very different philosophies. One seeks control. The other seeks removal. And Midoriya? He is already certain of his path. The principal set the teacup down on the bedside table with a soft clink. So the real question is, can either of you change it? The only reply was the steady beep of the heart monitor, and the weight of 3 men knowing a boy's choice might shape far more than his own future. UA classroom, a few days later. The hum of chatter filled the room, but it wasn't the same as before. Every time Izuku walked in, the sound shifted. Whispers lowered. Eyes lingered too long. Some wide with unease, others narrowed with suspicion. A few classmates avoided him altogether, desks sliding just a little further away. Even Bakugo had stopped shouting at him outright. He just stared, teeth grit, as though daring Izuku to make the next move. Izuku ignored them as best he could, sliding into his seat. His gloves creaked when he tightened them, his hood tugged low. He kept his focus forward, refusing to give the whispers weight. Hikari, 2 rows over, gave him the smallest nod when their eyes met. It was enough. The door scraped open. Quiet down. Aizawa shuffled in, still wrapped in bandages, his voice as flat as ever. He dropped a folder on the desk and scanned the room with tired but cutting eyes. "You've all had a rough start," he said. "Villains attacking on your first field trip isn't exactly standard procedure." His tone didn't change, but the weight behind the words landed heavy. A few students shifted uncomfortably. "But you're still here. Which means it's time to move forward." He pulled out a sheet of paper, holding it up. "UA's annual sports festival is coming up. In 2 weeks you'll all compete. No excuses." The room rippled with reactions: excitement, nerves, disbelief. "Wait, the festival? After villains just attacked the school?" Someone blurted. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "Precisely why we're holding it. The festival is a symbol. To the public, to the world, and to yourselves. UA isn't backing down. Neither should you." The room went quiet again. Izuku sat back slowly, absorbing the words. A festival. A chance to stand in front of everyone, heroes, civilians, the entire country watching. His heart thudded in his chest. A chance to prove them wrong. UA training grounds, afternoon. The sunlight glared off the reinforced floors as students broke into groups, chatter rising with nervous excitement. Pairs formed quickly, Bakugo dragging Kirishima with him, Todoroki coolly stepping aside as Momo approached, Ida already calling out strategy ideas with Uraraka. Within minutes, the class was alive with motion. Students sparring, quirks flashing, laughter mixing with grunts of effort. Izuku stood alone at the edge of the floor. He adjusted his gloves, eyes scanning the room. Everyone had someone. Everyone but him. A few glanced his way, but their eyes darted off quickly, whispers snapping between them. Too wary. Too afraid. The memory of the Nomu's shriek still lived in their ears. Izuku's jaw tightened. He looked down at his multi-tool, thumb running over the reinforced grip. He could train alone. He had before. He would again. But before he could step away, a voice cut through the noise. "I'll train with you." Hikari walked up, her bandages finally gone, her stance steady. Her green-gold eyes locked on his without hesitation. Izuku blinked. "You don't have to." "I want to." Her tone left no room for argument. She smirked faintly, leaning into her usual quiet wit. "Besides, you'll just overthink everything if I leave you alone." For the first time that day, Izuku's shoulders eased. Around them, a few students stared openly. Whispers flickered again, sharper now. "She's not afraid of him? Why would she risk it?" Izuku ignored them. He squared his stance, meeting Hikari's eyes. "Okay, let's train." She grinned, dropping into position. "Good. Try to keep up." And just like that, while the rest of the class sharpened their strengths, Izuku found his anchor, the one person who refused to let him stand alone. Later that week, the air buzzed with energy as pairs sparred all around, quirks flashing, voices rising with excitement. Izuku stood opposite Hikari, gloves tight on his hands, sleeves tugged down as always. They moved, quick and practiced. Days of sparring had given them rhythm. She struck sharp, he blocked and countered, his instincts sharper with each round. But something was off. Izuku's movements were stiff, hesitant, every strike pulled at the last second. Hikari broke off, frowning. "You're holding back again." Izuku's breath came fast, sweat running down his temple. He didn't meet her eyes. "Because I'm scared." "Of me?" "No. Of them." He glanced toward the other students, all sparring in pairs, none looking his way for long. Some still whispered when they thought he couldn't hear. "They already think I'm dangerous. If I slip, if I make contact without my gloves, it's over. They'll see me as the monster they've been waiting for." His voice dropped lower, heavier. "And Bakugo's not going to stop until he proves I don't belong here. If we fight, he'll push me until something breaks. And if that happens..." Izuku's hands trembled. "I don't know if I can stop it." Hikari's eyes softened, though her voice stayed steady. "Izuku, you can't let fear decide your fight before it starts. You're not out of control. You've sparred with me for weeks now and you've never once slipped." "That's with you," he muttered. "You cancel quirks. You're the only one I don't have to be afraid of touching. Out there, in front of the whole world, I'm not just fighting robots anymore. I'm fighting people. And if I screw up..." His throat tightened. "It won't just be a loss. It'll be proof. Proof I am what they already think I am." The silence hung heavy. Around them, laughter and shouts of classmates training felt distant, almost mocking. Hikari stepped closer, her green-gold eyes sharp but kind. "Then prove them wrong. You've already survived worse than their fear, Izuku. And if Bakugo comes for you, then you show him the same thing you've shown me, that you won't break." Izuku stared at her, jaw tight, before nodding once, slowly. I'll try. She smirked faintly, tapping her fist against his gloved hand. No. You'll do. Izuku's thoughts spiraled, his eyes fixed on the ground, until a warm pressure slipped into his hand. He froze. Hikari's fingers threaded through his gloved ones, firm and steady. For a heartbeat he braced for the old panic, the flinch, the instinct to pull back. But it didn't come. His grip stayed. His breath hitched, but his body didn't jerk away. For the first time in 4 years he didn't recoil. When he finally looked up, Hikari was already smirking at him, her green-gold eyes glinting. Well, look at that. Guess I'm the first person in a while you've let hold your hand, huh? Izuku's face heated instantly, his throat going dry. She leaned in just enough to make her voice teasing, sly. Careful, Midoriya. If you keep letting me do that, people are going to start thinking we're a thing. Izuku sputtered, pulling half a breath, but she just grinned wider and squeezed his hand once before letting go. The tension in his chest eased for the first time all day, replaced by something unfamiliar but not unwelcome. Warm. Izuku's face flushed red as Hikari smirked, fingers slipping from his. Before he could recover, a voice croaked softly from the far side of the training floor. Ribbit. Did you see that? Uraraka, mid-stretch, leaned closer to Tsuyu, who was crouched comfortably with her chin in her palm. Both of them had been sparring until moments ago, but their attention had drifted. Uraraka's eyes were wide, a little surprised. Yeah. I didn't think Midoriya-kun let anyone that close. He didn't even flinch. Tsuyu's gaze followed the pair across the room. Izuku resetting his stance, still a little pink, Hikari wearing a sly grin that looked far too pleased with herself. Interesting. Everyone else treats him like he's dangerous. She tilted her head, unblinking. But she doesn't. And he let her. Uraraka fidgeted, biting her lip. Do you think they're, you know? Tsuyu shrugged with her usual calm. Ribbit. Don't know yet. But if they aren't, give it time. The two girls exchanged a quiet look, a mix of curiosity and relief. Relief that maybe Izuku wasn't as untouchable as the whispers made him out to be. On the sparring floor, Hikari called, Come on, Midoriya, keep up. Izuku exhaled, squaring himself again. And for the first time, with eyes still lingering on him from all sides, he didn't feel completely alone. The day before the sports festival morning, the office was heavy with silence, the kind that made the ticking clock feel too loud. Izuku sat stiff in his chair, gloves on, eyes down. Nizu was calm at his desk. Aizawa leaned against the wall in bandages, and beside them sat the woman in the gray suit. The moment she spoke, Izuku's head snapped up. That voice. Midoriya Izuku. We're here to discuss your conduct at the USJ and the complaints that followed. His stomach twisted. It was her. The official from the precinct. The one who'd smiled thinly at him years ago and promised help that never came. Her badge gleamed cold under the office light. Parents are unsettled. I have received over 30+ email from parents saying they heard what happens at USJ. They say you were excessive, uncontrolled. That your presence endangers their children. A few officials have looked at the footage to confirm what they say is true. As of now, you are prohibited from using your absorption ability during the sports festival at UA, or any other time without permission from us. The gloves stay on. No contact. If you fail to comply, you'll be expelled from UA and dealt with as a threat to public safety. The words rang in Izuku's ears, but his hands were already trembling. Not with fear. With rage. You. His voice was low, raw. All those years ago. You sat across from me in that police station and told me I'd get support. That specialist would help me understand my quirk. His breath shook, but his eyes blazed. You knew what I was. You knew I was just a kid. And instead of help, you threw me to the wolves. Foster homes that called me a monster. Families that locked their doors. You left me to rot. The official didn't blink. Resources were limited. You frightened people then. You frighten them now. Something in Izuku snapped. He stood so abruptly his chair screeched back across the floor. His gloves creaked as his fists clenched. I frightened them? His voice cracked, sharp enough to rattle the glass. I saved lives at the USJ. I stopped that Noma when none of you could. I bled for this school. And all you see is a monster you didn't bother fixing when you had the chance. Sit down, the woman said coldly. Izuku leaned forward, eyes burning, voice like broken glass. No, you don't get to order me. Not after you abandoned me. Not after you branded me dangerous and left me with nothing. You want me restrained, muzzled, shackled? Fine. But don't you dare pretend this is about safety. This is about control. You're terrified of what I might become, so you'd rather kill me now than later. Midoriya. Aizawa's voice cut low and firm, sharp enough to slice through the tension. He raised a bandaged hand slightly as though to ground him. Sit. Izuku's chest heaved. He forced himself back down, but his eyes burned, locked on the official. Aizawa's tone didn't soften, but it shifted, not aimed at Izuku now, but her. He's not wrong. You promised support, and instead you branded a kid as a threat before he ever had a chance. You don't get to erase that. The woman's jaw tightened. Regardless of history, the boy is unstable. We can't allow him free rein on a public stage. The risks are why he has teachers, Aizawa cut in flatly. His voice carried no heat, only steel. Structure. Training. That's our job. Yours is not to corner a student until he snaps. My job is to prevent children like him to becoming a threat to society. Like me, yelled Izuku as broke the chair as he stood back up again, breathing heavily and raggedly. He jabbed a gloved finger at the woman, shaking with fury. I'll fight with your rules. I'll fight with your shackles. And when I win, when I stand in front of the whole damn country, everyone will see the truth. That I didn't need you. That I survived in spite of you and anyone else who was supposed to help me. For the first time, the woman's composure cracked. A flicker of unease as Izuku's words tore through the room. Nizu's whiskers twitched, sharp eyes glinting with interest. He tapped his claw lightly on his teacup. Midoriya. Anger like that can topple worlds if left unchecked. Izuku turned, teeth gritted, breath ragged. Then maybe the world needs toppling. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even Aizawa stared, his usually unreadable face tightened with unease. The woman finally snapped her folder shut. Then consider this your final warning, Midoriya. Step 1 inch out of line and you won't be a student anymore. You'll be an enemy. Izuku didn't flinch. His voice came out cold, steady. Then you better pray I never give you a reason. The air in the office was thick, charged, as if the boy in gloves had just declared war. Izuku, without saying another word, left, never looking back. Or seeing the concerned faces he left. UA, campus lawn, evening before the sports festival. The sun bled into the horizon, painting the campus in warm gold. A blanket stretched over the grass, a basket half open with snacks spilling out. A portable projector hummed, throwing shaky light onto a white sheet strung between poles. Hikari stretched out on her stomach, chin propped in her hands. Ms. Joke lounged on one side of the blanket, popping grapes into her mouth with exaggerated cheers. Aizawa sat cross-legged with his ever-present thermos, bandages still visible beneath his sweater. Izuku hesitated at the edge of the blanket, his gloves tugged tight. He didn't quite know where to sit. Sit down, Midoriya, Aizawa muttered in a non-threatening tone, not looking away from the projector. After the conversation with government official, he found Izuku tearing apart a punching bag. So he called his wife, who suggested another impromptu picnic with a movie. He had to basically drag Izuku out here, saying, "You don't need to be alone right now." So here they were, with Izuku finally lowering himself onto the far corner of the blanket. He kept his posture careful, as though afraid the smallest wrong move might shatter this fragile normalcy. Hikari glanced at him, smirk tugging at her lips. Without a word, she shifted, scooting just enough that her shoulder brushed his arm. Izuku froze, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she handed him a carton of popcorn. "Eat before Dad samples it all." Aizawa grunted. "I don't sample. I evaluate." Ms. Joke laughed, her voice ringing across the lawn. "Sure you do, Shota." Izuku took a piece of popcorn, his throat tight. Their shoulders still touched. He couldn't bring himself to move, but he didn't want to either. Later, as the old hero documentary played, cheesy narration booming about courage and saving smiles, Hikari leaned closer, her head tilting just enough to rest against his shoulder. Izuku's breath hitched, but when she didn't move, he let it stay. His gloved hand hovered, then rested lightly on the blanket beside hers. Across the blanket, Ms. Joke's grin widened. She leaned sideways, close enough that only Aizawa could hear her whisper. "So, first boyfriend, huh? You gonna be the overprotective dad now?" Aizawa didn't look away from the screen. He took a sip of coffee, voice low and flat. "They're not dating, but if he hurts her, gloves won't protect him." Ms. Joke chuckled softly, squeezing his arm. "It's okay, babe, I know you're still in denial. I promise I won't tell anyone. When you finally accept it, you'll be crying." Aizawa just groaned as Ms. Joke just snickered. The projector buzzed, filling the sheet with flickering light. On screen, a too loud narrator boomed about heroes smiling through every challenge. Izuku sat stiff, barely tasting the popcorn in his lap. The words from earlier, threat, expelled, Enemy, still pressed at the back of his mind. Beside him, Hikari shifted. She didn't look at the screen. She looked at him. "You've been quiet," she said softly, her voice almost drowned out by the film. Izuku's gloves creaked as he clenched his hands. "It's nothing." "Liar," she murmured. Her shoulder pressed more firmly against his. "I know what they said to you. I overheard my dad telling my mom." He was pissed. Izuku looked back at his teacher who was talking to his wife as he trying out all the different popcorns. It was a small comfort to Izuku knowing that Aizawa didn't like what happened to him and that he stood up for him. At times it really felt like he was the only adult at this school who treated him well, yet it didn't change how he was still feeling right now or most of the time. His throat tightened. "Then you know why I can't, why maybe I shouldn't even be here tomorrow. If I slip, if they're right." "They're not right." Her tone was steady, certain in a way his never was. She leaned in closer, eyes catching the light of the screen. "You save people. You saved me. If they can't see that, that's their blindness, not yours." Izuku's jaw worked, words jamming in his throat. "But what if they're not blind? What if I really am what they say?" Hikari reached down, her fingers brushing against his gloved hand on the blanket. Not quite holding it, just anchoring him. "Then I'll remind you who you really are. As many times as it takes." For a long moment, Izuku just stared at her, heart hammering, the chaos of the past 2 weeks threatening to spill over. But the warmth of her touch cut through it, grounding him in a way nothing else had. Across the blanket, Ms. Joke leaned toward Aizawa, whispering with a sly grin only he could hear. "She's his anchor. You see it, don't you?" Aizawa's eyes flicked to his daughter, to Izuku, then back to the screen. His reply was quiet but certain. "Yeah, I see it." On screen, the narrator crowed about heroes standing tall in the face of doubt. Izuku barely heard it. Sitting there with Hikari beside him, steady and unshaken, he realized the truth. No symbol on a poster, no legend in a cape. She was the one who made him believe he could keep going. For him, Hikari was the real hero. The same time Nizu's office. The office was dim, most of the lights shut off. Nizu sat at his desk, a thin wisp of steam curling from his teacup. Across from him, All Might leaned against the window, his true form gaunt in the shadows. For once, Nizu's usual smile was nowhere to be seen. "All Might," he said softly, "you heard the report?" Tashinori nodded, arms folded, his expression tight. "I did. And I told you. This boy. Midoriya, he's walking the same line All for One did. That anger, that certainty." His hand clenched into a fist. "I've seen it before." Nizu's whiskers twitched. He stared at the reflection of the tea in his cup, hearing the echo of Izuku's words. "Maybe the world needs toppling." "At first I thought it was trauma shaping him," Nizu murmured. "A boy abandoned too many times, grasping at control because it was all he had left. But today, that wasn't just fear. That was fury. The kind of fury that doesn't fade." All Might pushed off the window, pacing once. "So what will you do? You've been shielding him, giving him structure. Are you ready to admit it's not enough?" The principal's eyes glinted in the low light. "Perhaps. Aizawa still insists restraint can be taught, that Midoriya's heart is loyal even if his methods aren't. But I saw more than loyalty today. I saw contempt. For the system. For authority. For us." He lifted his gaze to All Might, voice quiet but sharp. "You may be right. If he continues down this path, he won't be a hero we shape. He'll be a force we have to contain." All Might's face hardened. "Then we have to act before it's too late." Nizu swirled his tea, the liquid catching the faint light. "And yet, if we act too soon, we may make him into exactly what we fear. If we wait too long, we risk the same." Silence stretched between them, heavy as stone. Finally, Nizu set his cup down with a soft click. "Very well, All Might. You've convinced me to lean toward caution. Not removal, not yet. But restrictions. Surveillance. Control." His tail curled slowly. "If Midoriya truly cannot be trusted, I want to know before the world finds out." All Might nodded once, grimly. "Good. Because the next time he loses control, we might not be able to stop it." Nizu's sharp eyes lingered on the dark window, his reflection faint. "Then let's hope, for all our sakes, we still have time." UA locker room, day of the sports festival. The air was thick with nerves. Students shuffled into their tracksuits, voices buzzing with quiet excitement and tension. Metal lockers clanged open and shut. Izuku sat at the far bench, gloves tugged snug, sleeves pulled down as always. He could feel the eyes on him, some cautious, some openly wary, but he kept his head down, lacing his boots with steady hands. The sound of a locker shutting sharply broke the hum. Todoroki stepped forward, calm but intense, his mismatched eyes locking on Izuku. "Midoriya," he said flatly. "You're the strongest one here. Everyone saw what you did at USJ. And if you're not, then you're the most dangerous. Either way, you're the one we have to beat." The room went quiet. Even Bakugo paused in tugging his shoelace, sparks flickering faintly in his palm. Izuku stood slowly, meeting Todoroki's gaze head-on. His voice was steady, low. "I'm not a monster. But I'm not about to roll over for anyone either." He tugged his glove tight with a snap. "If you want to test me, you'll find out for yourself." Bakugo barked a sharp laugh, stepping forward. "This it. There it is. Finally showing some spine, hot Deku? Don't act like you're hot shit. You think killing that freak makes you better than me?" Izuku's eyes flicked to him, calm but cold. "No. I think surviving everything I have means I'm not weak enough to let you talk down to me anymore." The sparks in Bakugo's hands flared hotter, his teeth bared in a snarl. "You?" Todoroki stepped back slightly, studying Izuku in silence, his eyes narrowing, not with disgust but with calculation. The tension simmered until Aizawa's voice cut sharply from the doorway. "Move it. You're on in 5. Bakugo clicked his tongue and shoved past, muttering curses. Todoroki lingered just long enough to give Izuku one last unreadable look before turning away. Izuku sat back down, his heart was pounding, but his voice in his own mind was clear. "I'm not a monster. And I'm not a victim. I'm Midoriya Izuku. And I'm here to prove it." Soon the roar of the crowd seeped through the walls, a low thunder that made the air hum. The students lined up, shifting nervously, waiting for Present Mix's booming announcement. Izuku adjusted his gloves for the third time, heart hammering in his chest. But when he glanced sideways, he noticed Hikari wasn't smirking like usual. Her jaw was tight, eyes flicking toward the doors, her hands curling into fists at her sides. She caught him looking and forced a grin. "What? Nervous?" Izuku studied her for a moment, then shook his head faintly. "You are." Her grin faltered just a little. "Dad's still healing. Mom's watching from home. Everyone's eyes are on us. Yeah, I'm nervous. I have things to prove as well, you know." For a second, Izuku just stood there, the words catching in his throat. Then slowly he reached out and set a gloved hand on her shoulder. "I get it," he said softly. "But you don't have to carry it all at once. We'll walk out there together. No matter what happens, you're not alone in this." Hikari blinked, startled, then a small, real smile slipped past her nerves. "Huh. Guess you're capable of pep talks after all." Izuku smirked faintly, tugging his hood lower. "Don't get used to it." She leaned in just enough to whisper, sly but grateful, "Careful, Midoriya. If you keep talking like that, people really will think we're a thing." Izuku flushed, but this time he didn't flinch away. He just squeezed her shoulder lightly, steady. The doors ahead creaked, the roar of the stadium swelling. Together, side by side, they stepped forward. The opening ceremony. The sunlight blazed down on the stadium, banners snapping in the wind. Tens of thousands of voices rose in thunderous cheers, the sound so loud it rattled in the students' bones. Present Mix's voice boomed across the arena. "Welcome one and all, to the UA Sports Festival." The crowd roared again. Cameras flashed. The students of Class 1A and 1B stood in neat rows, every eye in the country on them. Izuku tugged his hood lower, his gloves creaking faintly. Even with Hikari beside him, he could feel the weight of the stares, the whispers from the crowd that echoed the ones he'd already heard in class. "That's the boy from UF. Dangerous, monster in the making." Midnight strutted onto the stage, smile dazzling as she lifted her mic. "Now, before the games begin, who will represent Class 1A with the opening pledge?" A shuffle of boots, then Bakugo stepped forward, his grin feral, eyes burning. "I'll do it." The crowd erupted in cheers at his confidence, but the class braced themselves. Bakugo raised the mic, sneer sharp. "I'm gonna win this thing." He jabbed a thumb toward himself, voice cracking with fire. "No question, no debate, I'll be number one." The crowd cheered again with a couple of boos from the other classes, but then he turned, eyes locking on Izuku in front of everyone. "And don't think I don't see you, Deku. You think killing that Nomu makes you the strongest? Makes you a hero?" His grin twisted, cruel and blazing. "I'll crush you here. In front of the whole world. Then we'll see if anyone still calls you anything but a monster." The stadium gasped, the weight of his words slamming across the rows of students. Cameras zoomed in on Izuku's face. Hikari stiffened beside him, shooting Bakugo a glare sharp enough to cut. But Izuku only lifted his head, tugging his glove tight with a snap. His voice carried clear, steady over the murmur of the crowd. I'm not a monster. He met Bakugo's eyes head-on. But I'm not about to bow down to you either. The stadium buzzed, split between cheers and uneasy murmurs. Present Mike cackled into the mic, feeding the flames. Oh, the tension is real, folks. Looks like this year's festival is going to be explosive. Obstacle race. The stadium roared as the starting gates rattled. Midnight's whip cracked the air. Ready, go. The students surged forward. Todoroki froze the ground in an instant, skating ahead on a sheet of ice. Bakugo rocketed over the field, explosions cracking like thunder. Izuku moved later. Not fastest, not flashiest, just sharp-eyed. The first wave of robots thundered into view, blocking the path. Students scattered, blasting, slashing, smashing through the machines. Izuku didn't. His mother's quirk tugged, pulling at the bolts in the robot's joints. One by one, their limbs buckled, collapsing under their own weight as he slipped between them. Efficient. Ruthless. The crowd gasped. He's breaking them apart piece by piece. That's terrifying precision. He pushed on, sweat dripping down his temple, every motion calculated. When a robot swung down at him, he yanked a plate of metal loose from its side, turning it into a makeshift shield as the arm slammed uselessly against it. The second obstacle, the gorge, split the path. Some students built bridges, others leapt. Izuku used his mother's quirk to yank loose the rope to get one end. Taking a deep breath, Izuku began to run off the edge of the gorge, allowing him to use his momentum to swing across it one fluent movement. And then came the minefield. Students hesitated, nerves buzzing. The ground shimmered with buried charges, each one ready to explode at the slightest pressure. Izuku didn't slow. He scanned the field, eyes narrowing. With a sharp tug, he pulled together a couple of the landmines, making sure he didn't make them explode as he pulled them towards him. Using the same scrap metal he's been using as a shield. He climbed onto it, balancing low, then let it crash onto a mine. Boom. The explosion launched him skyward, the chunk of debris carrying him higher and closer to the finish line. The crowd screamed as the air lit up with smoke and fire. Izuku crouched low, teeth grit, directing the slab beneath him like a wild surfboard. Each time it dropped, he used his mother's quirk to pull another mine underneath, igniting it, catapulting him higher, faster, until the finish line loomed. With one final crash, the debris blasted him over the last row of mines. He tumbled forward, rolling across the ground, quickly getting up and sprinting and crossing the finish line. First place, Midoriya Izuku. Present mixed voice boomed, the stadium exploding in cheers and gasps. Izuku staggered upright, chest heaving, sleeves torn, gloves singed. He had nothing but his mother's quirk and a scrap of junk, and he'd beaten them all. Todoroki skidded across a moment later, face cold with fury. Bakugo hit the ground in a snarl of sparks. Ida followed, panting hard. But Izuku was already standing tall, eyes blazing under his hood. 6 years quirkless. 4 years branded a monster. And now, first place. With her quirk. With my quirk. The stadium buzzed with mixed voices. That was insane. Why did that other kid call him a villain? These first years are amazing. Sports festival, cavalry battle. The stadium buzzed as Midnight explained the rules, her whip cracking for emphasis. Form your teams of 2 to 4. Remember, Midoriya took first place, so his headband is worth 10 million points. The words crashed like thunder. Immediately, the field exploded with noise, students grabbing partners, hands pointing, alliances forming in a rush. Izuku stood still. His gloves creaked as his fists clenched. Every time someone's eyes met his, they darted away. Nobody wanted him. Not with the target. Not with the whispers of monster and villain still hanging over him. He grit his teeth. Figures. Even now. Then Shinso stepped into place beside him. Guess that settles it, huh? Izuku glanced over, confused. What does? Shinso's half-lidded eyes sharpened. You and me. Villain kids. His voice was just loud enough to carry. We stick together. Whispers flicked instantly through the crowd. Izuku's stomach tightened. Villain kids. Shinso smirked faintly, but there was no humor in it. You think you're the only one they call dangerous? My quirk's brainwashing. One wrong word, one slip. I can turn someone into a puppet. Doesn't matter that I've never abused it. Doesn't matter I trained to control it. People see me and think villain. Teachers, classmates, even pros. His tone dropped, quieter. I know what it's like to walk into a room and see nothing but suspicion staring back. You do too. Izuku's breath caught. For a second, the noise of the stadium faded. Shinso shoved his hands into his pockets, voice firm again. So yeah, villain kids. But if they're already gonna paint us that way, let's make it work for us. We'll show them what villains look like when they save the day. Izuku blinked, stunned into silence. And for the first time, the weight on his shoulders didn't feel quite as crushing. Before Izuku could reply, a blur of pink hair and goggles popped into place beside him. Perfect, Mei Hatsum declared, arms already full of straps, coils, and gadgets. I was waiting for an excuse to test my babies, and what better than the team everyone wants to take down? Izuku blinked. Babies? My invention's silly. Mobility, stability, defense. I'll make sure we don't go down easy. And then a third shadow stepped up, arms folded, expression unshaken. I'm in too. Hikari's eyes cut to Izuku, green gold glinting. Not just because it's you. Because I want to win. And because I'm not letting you stand here alone. For a moment, Izuku's chest eased, the first breath that didn't burn in hours. He looked between them, Shinso with his quiet defiance, Mei buzzing with manic confidence, Hikari steady at his side. The whispers swirled louder around them, but Izuku's fire burned steady. All right. Then let's give them something to really whisper about. Present Mick's voice boomed from above, practically shaking the stands. Oh, look at this, folks. The 10 million point headband is going to Midoriya's team, with Shinso, Hatsum, and Aizawa's own daughter, Hikari, ready to turn the whole field upside down. The crowd roared, excitement clashing with unease. And at the center, Izuku stood tall with his misfit squad, eyes sharp under his hood. The horn blared. Start. Midnight's voice cracked through the air. The arena erupted instantly, dozens of teams surging forward, quirks blazing. At the center, 4 outcasts braced together. Izuku at the front, gloves creaking as his mother's quirk thrummed in the air around him. Hikari on one side, her aura pulsing faintly, quirks around her sputtering and weakening. And Mei at the other side, her prototype stabilizers locking their footing and harnesses in place. And high above them, perched proudly with 10 million points tied around his head, Shinso Hitoshi. He leaned forward with a smirk. Let's see how long it takes before they realize we're not the easy prey they think we are. The first rush came immediately, a squad of 3, one launching flames, another bounding with enhanced legs, the third reaching for Shinso's headband. Izuku's hand snapped out. His mother's quirk tugged, ripping stones, rocks from other students breaking the floor or using their quirks. They dragging them up into the attacker's path. They stumbled, footing collapsing beneath them. Fire now, one shouted, but the flames fizzled the second they entered Hikari's radius. Her smirk was quick, sharp. Wrong move. Above them, Shinso's voice cut out, cool and clear. You think you can beat us? The attacker answered before realizing, of course we can. Their eyes glazed instantly. Shinso leaned closer, tone sharp as a knife. Sit. The student dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. The rest of their team broke apart, momentum ruined. Izuku surged forward, ripped their headband loose, and handed it up to Shinso without missing stride. The crowd gasped. Seeing the chaos, another team came barreling from the left. Bakugo's explosions lit the air, propelling his squad like a rocket. Sparks rained as he roared, I'm taking that headband, Deku. Izuku grit his teeth. Not this time. A chunk of debris ripped up from the field, pulled straight into Bakugo's blast path. It detonated midair, scattering the explosion and throwing off his trajectory. Bakugo snarled, barely righting himself as Kirishima caught their balance. Keep pushing. Bakugo barked. Shinso's smirk widened. Oh, this is going to be fun. Around them, Mei's inventions hummed and hissed, stabilizers locking their formation every time another team slammed into them. She cackled, goggles flashing. Yes. Data, glorious data. Keep feeding me numbers. Minute by minute, team after team fell apart trying to topple them. Izuku team dismantled them every time. Hikari's aura gutted quirks before they could land. Shinso's voice snapped open every careless mouth. And Mei's gadgets kept them upright through it all. By the time the horn blew, the dust cleared to show their headbands still gleaming at the top. Time. Team Midoriya holds on to the 10 million points. President Mike howled. And they're headed to the next round. The stadium shook with noise, cheers, gasps, jeers. Half the crowd thrilled, the other half unsettled. Izuku stood hunched, sweat dripping, chest heaving. His gloves creaked as he looked up at his team. Hikari steady and smirking. Mei grinning like a mad scientist. Shinso perched tall, expression unreadable but satisfied. For the first time, Izuku didn't feel alone. He felt dangerous, yes, but dangerous together. And when Shinso leaned down, muttering just loud enough for him to hear, "See? Villain kids win too." Izuku let himself smirk back. Just a little. The arena lights dimmed, then flared as the giant bracket lit up across the big screen. The crowd erupted in cheers. Present mic voice booming, practically rattling the stadium. "Alright people, the cavalry battle is over, the teams have broken up, and now it's time for the main event. One-on-one matches, baby. Just you, your quirk, your wits, no excuses." Spotlights swept across the stage, landing on the first pair of names. Present mic, grinning wide, pointing to the board. And leading us off, it's Hitoshi Shinso versus Mei Hatsum. The mind-bending enigma versus the mad inventor. The crowd roared, half curious, half laughing at Mei already bouncing with gadgets strapped to her harness. Cut to the booth, Eraserhead, arms crossed, speaking flatly. Eraserhead. On paper this isn't even close. Shinso's quirk can end a fight with one wrong response. But Hatsum doesn't play like a fighter. She'll use every gadget she's built to stall, distract, and turn the match into a performance. If Shinso doesn't stay focused, she'll make a spectacle of him. Present mic, laughing, leaning in. You heard him, folks. This might be the only match where winning isn't the goal. Hatsum's got sponsors to impress, and Shinso just wants respect. Who's walking away happy? The crowd buzzed, some chanting Shinso's name, others shouting for Mei to show the babies. Match 1. Hitoshi Shinso versus Mei Hatsum. The two stepped into the ring. Shinso stood slouched, bored, hands shoved into his pockets. Mei bounced on her toes, goggles gleaming, arms loaded with gadgets strapped across her harness. Present mic bellowed into the mic, and kicking off round 1, it's the brainy boy versus the baby builder. Who's taking it home? Midnight cracked her whip. Begin. Mei immediately lunged forward, not at Shinso but to face the crowd. Hey sponsors. Watch this. She yanked a lever on her belt. A set of gyroscopic stabilizers whirred to life, anchoring her balance no matter how she leaned. Then she whipped out a grappling hook, firing it into the upper wall. The crowd gasped as she swung around, hanging upside down, still perfectly stable. "This one's great for mobility," she shouted. Shinso raised an eyebrow, muttering, "You're not even fighting me." Mei grinned, landing in front of him. "Oh, I am. But the real fight is exposure. Right now, you and me? We're free advertising, baby." The crowd laughed and clapped, confused but entertained. Mei kept going, jet shoes that sputtered before stabilizing, a retractable shield that almost hit Shinso in the face, he barely dodged, and a wrist-mounted grappler that she accidentally fired into the dirt, dragging her skidding in a circle. Through it all, Shinso didn't budge. He didn't even activate his quirk. He just stood, watching, letting her put on her spectacle. Finally, after a dozen gadgets flashed and clanked, Mei straightened and gave him a sly smile. "Guess I've shown enough. Don't want to waste the whole tournament showing off my babies." Shinso blinked, wary. "You're just going to quit?" Mei shrugged. "Sure. I got what I wanted." She turned toward the edge of the ring and stepped out without hesitation. The whistle blew. Winner, Shinso Hitoshi. The crowd erupted, half cheering for Mei's antics, half buzzing about Shinso's mysterious composure. Shinso muttered as they passed each other, "Well, that was something, you didn't even try." Mei winked. "I did try. Just not to win. Now the sponsors have my number. And you? You still get to keep your secret. Call it a win-win, partner." Shinso watched her bounce away, frowning faintly, then smirked to himself. "Not bad." Match 2, Hikari Aizawa versus Tetsu. The crowd buzzed as the two faced off. Tetsu slammed his fists together, skin flashing into steel, gleaming in the sunlight. "You'd better hit harder than you look," he roared. "Steel doesn't break." Hikari cracked her neck, calm and sharp-eyed. "Everything breaks eventually. Begin." Midnight's whip cracked. Tetsu charged like a freight train, fists swinging. His steel form glinted with every strike, each blow sending shockwaves through the arena floor. Hikari blocked, slipping sideways, her scarf trailing faintly behind. She countered with sharp jabs and sweeps, but every hit clanged off his steel hide. He grinned, unfazed. "You can't dent me," he bellowed. "I could do this all day." But as the fight wore on, his grin started to falter. At first, his swings were crisp, every motion powered by his steel form. But slowly, ever so slowly, the gleam dulled. His movements lost a fraction of sharpness. His breaths came heavier. The crowd leaned forward, murmuring, "What's happening to him?" Why does he look weaker? Tetsu roared and swung again, but this time his arm didn't carry the same weight. Hikari slipped inside his guard, landed a clean palm strike to his chest, and he staggered back with a grunt, the steel shimmering like it was straining to hold. Her eyes glowed faintly green-gold. Took you long enough. Within her suppression field, his transformation quirk sputtered. The steel skin flaked, patches of normal flesh showing through as he struggled to keep it up. What the hell? Tetsu gasped, sweat running down his face. Hikari didn't hesitate. She drove a kick into his leg, dropping him to one knee. An elbow strike to his jaw sent him spinning, and with one final sweep she sent him skidding across the boundary line. Thud. The whistle blew. Winner, Hikari Aizawa. The stadium roared, present Mike nearly blowing his mic out. Oh, what a turnaround. She let him burn himself out until his quirk failed, then picked him apart piece by piece. Tetsu groaned on the ground, still half flickering between steel and flesh, staring up at her in disbelief. You shut me down? Hikari adjusted her stance, breathing steady, eyes already calm again. You relied on your quirk. I didn't. She turned and walked off the field. From the sidelines, Izuku's chest tightened. He knew that feeling, not just winning but being defined by what others feared. And for the first time he wondered if Hikari understood more about him than anyone else. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Hikari walked calmly off the field, Tetsu still groaning where he'd fallen. In the commentator's box, Present Mike was practically vibrating. Did you see that, folks? A quirk suppression field, slowly eating away at a transformation quirk until it just, poof, cracked wide open. What a wild strategy. The audience gasped at the word monster, whispers spreading. But another voice cut through, calm and precise. Not wild. A calculated fighter. The camera panned to show Principal Nizu, perched neatly in the commentary booth beside Present Mike, tiny paws folded primly on the table. Nizu. Mike shouted, startled. What are you doing up here? Offering clarity, Nizu said pleasantly, his eyes sharp. Miss Aizawa's quirk is not immediate nullification like her father's. It is suppression. Think of it as gradually turning down the volume of someone's quirk until it's barely audible at all. He gestured with one paw toward the replay on the big screen, where Tetsu's gleaming steel slowly dulled the longer he stayed in range. For transformation quirks such as Tetsu's, this process takes time. His steel skin held because it was already active. But every second she forced him to keep fighting inside her radius, his stamina drained faster than it should have. Eventually, his quirk could not maintain itself. Present Mike leaned closer, eyes wide. So she's like a slow eraser? A steady eraser, Nizu corrected. And far more insidious in its own way. Most students rely on quirks like extensions of themselves. Her aura does not strip them instantly, it makes them fail in the middle of battle. That psychological edge is powerful. The crowd murmured louder, unease rising. On the sidelines, Aizawa leaned back in his chair, eyes half-lidded as he muttered, "She's better than I was at her age." Nizu's ears twitched, a faint smile crossing his face. She also doesn't flinch from combat. That too is very much her mother. Present Mike slammed the table. So what you're saying is, don't get too close to Miss Aizawa unless you want your quirk to fail you. The stadium erupted again, half cheers, half fearful murmurs. Down on the floor, Hikari shot a glance toward the booth. She caught her father's faint nod of approval, and for the first time since the tournament, a small smile curved her lips. And in that explosive first-round clash, Bakugo blasts through Uraraka's meteor shower and clinches the win. Now we're heading for Izuku Midoriya versus Momo Yaoyorozu. The stadium was electric with whispers as Izuku walked onto the arena floor, hood low, gloves pulled tight. That's him, the Nomu kid. Why is he so dangerous? Is he even allowed to fight? Across from him, Momo Yaoyorozu approached with steady, measured steps. The crowd noticed immediately, her usual sleeveless outfit had been altered. Now she wore fitted long sleeves, sleek but practical. More murmurs rippled through the stands. She covered up? That limits her quirk, doesn't it? She's being cautious. Izuku's chest tightened when he saw it. His fists curled inside his gloves. She changed her whole uniform, just for me. On the surface he knew what it meant. She respects me enough to prepare. She isn't underestimating me. But under that respect was something else, something that still stung. She's afraid of me. And maybe that's fair. Momo's expression was calm, focused. No sneer, no recoil. Just the eyes of someone treating him as a fighter, not a monster. but the sleeves still burned in his vision. Midnight cracked her whip. Begin. Momo struck first, staff slicing clean through the air. Izuku dodged, his quirk tugging sharply. The staff rattled in her grip, nearly ripped away, but the sleeves gave her leverage, the fabric shielding against the direct pull of his power. She braced, holding firm. Izuku's voice was low, almost bitter. You thought about this? Momo's answer was steady. Of course. I take every opponent seriously. The chain whip came next, the staff splitting into segments. Izuku snapped his hand, pulling. The links shuddered, then unraveled mid-swing, fragments clattering across the stone. The crowd gasped. He broke it apart again. Momo didn't falter. A biolo spun from her hand, hissing through the air. Izuku caught it mid-flight, his quirk yanking it straight into his grip. With one fluid motion he hurled it back at her. She blocked with a freshly created shield, only for the shield itself to rattle and then tear from her hands, dragged away by Izuku's quirk. The crowd erupted in confused shouts. That's not a villain's quirk at all. It's attraction, like magnetism. Then why do people say he's dangerous? Izuku's jaw clenched. Because the truth doesn't matter. Only what they decide I am. Momo shifted to smoke bombs, clouding the ring in gray haze. Izuku crouched low, sweat stinging his eyes. He tracked the sound of her weapons clattering faintly in the fog, then surged forward. She appeared with a spear raised, sharp and steady. Izuku's glove slammed the shaft, ripping it apart in fragments. His shoulder crashed into her chest, driving her back. Her heels scraped the boundary line. One final push and she stumbled out of bounds. Thud. The whistle blew. Winner, Izuku Midoriya. Present Mike shouted, voice booming over the roar of the crowd. The stadium erupted, awe, confusion and unease clashing together. Izuku stood tall, chest heaving, eyes shadowed beneath his hood. He pulled his gloves tighter, whispering under his breath. She respected me, but she was afraid too. And maybe that's fair. But it still hurts. On the sideline, Momo caught her breath, eyes steady on him. No fear. Just clear respect. Hikari gave him a faint nod, Shinso smirked. The crowd kept buzzing. So that's his quirk? Attraction. Then what's all this monster talk about? He fights, ruthless. Maybe that's what scares them. Izuku turned away from the noise, chest burning. Not a monster. Not weak. Just me. Skipping the other matches. Bakugo, Todoroki, Ojiro, Kirishima, Tokayama all won. Round 2 match 1. Hitoshi Shinso vs Mashireo Ojiro. The crowd leaned in, buzzing with curiosity. Ojiro stretched, his tail sweeping behind him in controlled arcs. Shinso slouched in, hands in his pockets, bored expression never breaking. Begin. Ojiro lunged, footwork crisp. His tail lashed out in a wide arc, forcing Shinso back immediately. Shinso dodged with lazy precision, but Ojiro pressed hard, jabs, sweeps, strikes that showed years of disciplined martial arts. Not going to fight back? Ojiro challenged. Shinso's voice was quiet, cutting through the air. You're strong. But do you really think it'll matter? Ojiro answered automatically, what? His body froze mid-motion. His tail mid-swing stopped cold. The crowd gasped. Brainwashing, Shinso muttered under his breath. He pointed toward the edge. Walk. Ojiro obeyed without resistance, his controlled steps carrying him right out of the ring. The whistle blew. Winner, Hitoshi Shinso. The crowd roared, half thrilled, half unsettled. Ojiro shook his head violently as the effect wore off, glaring back with frustration. Shinso didn't gloat. He just walked off muttering, villain kid, huh? Works fine for me. Round 2 match 2. Shoto Todoroki vs Hikari Aizawa. The air grew colder the moment Todoroki stepped into the arena, ice crackling faintly around his boots. Hikari walked in calm and steady, green-gold eyes sharp, long sleeves rolled up just past her wrists. Midnight's whip cracked. Begin. Todoroki wasted no time. A massive wave of ice erupted across the arena, jagged spires racing forward. The crowd gasped. Hikari's aura pulsed, quirks inside her radius faltering. The ice closest to her slowed, dulling at the edges, but the sheer volume of Todoroki's attack kept coming. She dashed forward, weaving between the spires. Her fists struck with precision, shattering chunks of ice that dared too close. Closing distance was her only option. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. He stepped back, throwing up more walls, keeping her at range. You can't reach me. Hikari's jaw clenched. She burst forward again, scarf snapping at her side, her aura dragging down the strength of his ice as she closed. For a heartbeat it looked like she'd break through. But Todoroki's expression hardened, frost blasting in a sudden surge. The cold bit into her limbs, her movements slowing. She tried to push, a strike here, a step closer, but her boots froze to the ground. Todoroki's ice wrapped up her legs, locking her in place before she could close the gap. The whistle blew. Winner, Shoto Todoroki. The crowd roared, though not without murmurs. She almost got him. If she'd gotten closer. She's dangerous in her range. But outside of it. Hikari gritted her teeth as the ice melted away, flexing her stiff arms. She shot one glance at Todoroki, sharp, unyielding, then walked off the field, expression calm despite the sting of loss. From the sidelines, Izuku watched her go, fists tight in his gloves. She fought smart. She pushed him. But he's stronger. Right now, at least. The roar of the crowd still echoed as Hikari stepped off the stage, her arms crossed, sweat cooling on her brow. She kept her face calm, but her jaw was tight, the only crack in her mask. Izuku was already waiting near the tunnel. He shifted awkwardly, his gloves creaking as he clenched them. "Hey, you did great out there." Hikari huffed softly, brushing her damp hair back. "I lost." "You almost broke through," Izuku insisted. "If you'd gotten just a little closer, he wouldn't have been able to." "Izuku." She stopped him with one sharp look, then softened. "It's fine." He frowned under his hood. "Is it?" She sighed, leaning against the wall. "You think I don't know what it's like? Having a quirk people call weak? Mine isn't flashy. It's not explosive. Half the time, it looks like I'm just standing there until the other person burns themselves out." Her green-gold eyes lifted to his. "Sound familiar?" Izuku froze. His breath caught. Hikari shrugged. "People underestimate me until they don't. Then they start calling me dangerous. I don't care which way they look at it. Either way, I'm still me." For a long moment, Izuku couldn't answer. The words sat heavy because they weren't pity, they were truth. Finally, he managed a small nod. "You're not weak. You're the strongest person I've met in my whole life." Hikari gave him a crooked smile, just a flicker of warmth. "Careful. I might start thinking you actually like me." Izuku flinched, immediately tugging his gloves, trying to hide the heat creeping into his cheeks. Her smirk widened, but she didn't press it. She just pushed off the wall, shoulders rolling loose again. "Go focus on your match. Villain kids don't get easy wins." As she walked past, Izuku whispered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. "Neither of us are weak." Match 3. Izuku Midoriya vs. Ijiro Kirishima. The stadium was alive with noise as the two squared up. Kirishima's grin was wide, teeth bared, his skin already hardening into jagged steel-like plates. "All right, Midoriya. Let's make this manly." Izuku tugged his gloves tight, hood shadowing his eyes. "I don't plan to hold back." Midnight's whip cracked. "Begin." Kirishima charged like a boulder in motion, fists swinging with reckless weight. Izuku dodged sideways, boots scraping stone as the ground shook with each strike. "You can't break me," Kirishima shouted, slamming his fist into the floor. The arena cracked, debris scattering in all directions. Izuku's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand, and one shard zipped across the ground unnaturally, clipping Kirishima's foot just as he lunged. The hardened fighter stumbled for half a step. The crowd gasped, not because they didn't know his quirk but because of how precisely he used it. He aimed for the foot. He's not just pulling stuff, he's targeting weak points. With a quirk like that? Kirishima stomped down hard, shattering the fragment underfoot. "That's clever, bro. But it won't stop me." He barreled forward again, fists flying. Izuku pulled another shard, but instead of throwing it at Kirishima's chest, he flicked it high. Kirishima's guard rose instinctively, blocking. Just as Izuku slid low, hooking his leg behind him and shoving with his shoulder. The hardened boy wobbled, balance broken. Izuku's quirk snapped another shard into his hand. He slammed it against Kirishima's shoulder like a lever, forcing his momentum sideways. Kirishima staggered, and his boot scraped out of bounds. The whistle blew. Winner, Izuku Midoriya. The crowd erupted, not in shock at his quirk, but in disbelief at how he wielded it. He used a support class quirk like that? That was surgical. Why is he called a monster? Izuku stood hunched, chest heaving, pulling his gloves tighter. His hood shadowed his face, but inside his thoughts burned. Not weak. Not useless. Not just a monster. I'll show them all. Kirishima's hardening faded as he laughed, clapping Midoriya on the shoulder. "That was awesome, man. Crazy smart." You fight sharper than anyone I've seen. Izuku blinked, startled. Thanks. From the sidelines, Hikari smirked faintly, her sharp green-gold eyes following him. The crowd already knew his quirk, but now they understood. In Izuku's hands, even something small could tear giants down. Semi-final matches, announcer commentary. The crowd was on its feet, the roar like a living storm. Spotlights swept across the arena floor as the brackets appeared in glowing text on the jumbo screen. Present mic voice booming, practically shaking the stands. Alright, listen up, listen up. The quarters are done, the dust has cleared, and now it's time for the semi-finals. 2 matches, 4 fighters, and only 2 will walk out to the finals. He jabbed a finger toward the screen as the names lit up. Present mic. First up, Katsuki Bakugo vs Hitoshi Shinso. Explosive rage versus deadly calm. Fireworks and mind games, baby. The crowd screamed, half chanting Byujo, and half buzzing about Shinso's brainwashing quirk. Cut to the booth. Aizawa sat with arms folded, eyes sharp, voice even. Aizawa. Bakugo is raw aggression, no question. His quirk's power and mobility give him a serious advantage. But Shinso doesn't need to overpower him, he just needs to provoke one response. If Bakugo loses his temper even once, the fight is over. Present mic, grinning, hyped. Oh snap, you heard it here. Can Bakugo keep his cool, or will Shinso pull the strings like a master puppeteer? The screen shifted again, showing the second bracket. Present mic. And on the other side, Izuku Midoriya vs Shoto Todoroki. Unpredictable precision against raw elemental power. This is gonna be a collision, folks. The stadium shook with cheers at Todoroki's name, though a low ripple of murmurs followed Izuku's. Aizawa, leaning forward, tone more deliberate. Todoroki has overwhelming control of the field. His ice alone can dominate the arena if Midoriya lets him. But Midoriya fights differently, he doesn't play by expectations, he dismantles. Present mic, throwing his arms wide. Oh, deep cuts from the man himself. It's ice and fire versus steel nerves and scrap metal genius. Who's taking it, people? The crowd roared, the sound rattling the stadium's very frame. Aizawa, quietly, almost under his breath. Whichever one of them stops running from who they are. The tunnels under the arena were quieter than the roaring stadium above. Izuku walked with his gloves pulled tight, Hikari at his side. She bumped him lightly with her elbow. You're up next, she said. Don't let your head get too heavy. Izuku gave a faint grunt, tightening his gloves. His mind was already replaying every shard of debris, every angle from the last match. Then they turned a corner and froze. Standing just ahead was Shoto Todoroki, silent, eyes narrowed in quiet fury. Beside him loomed a man Izuku had only ever seen on television. Endeavor, flames rippling faintly from his shoulders even in the narrow hall. You know what to do, Endeavor said, voice a low growl. Show them your fire. Prove you're better than All Might. Shoto didn't move. His jaw clenched, his gaze locked straight ahead. I told you already, he muttered, voice like ice. I'll win without using that side. I don't need your fire. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Izuku felt it like a punch to the chest. That's not a father. That's a warden. Endeavor leaned down, voice sharp. You think you get to choose? You're my creation. You don't get to waste power that's yours. Shoto didn't look at him. His eyes flicked to Izuku and Hikari instead, just for a heartbeat. A silent acknowledgement. Izuku's fists tightened in his gloves. He knew that look. He'd seen it in mirrors. Someone defined by fear and expectation, not by choice. Hikari stepped forward, her voice steady. Your son's not your tool. He doesn't need you to tell him how to win. Endeavor's fiery gaze turned on her, but she didn't flinch. For once, the suppression in her eyes wasn't her quirk, it was defiance. Izuku's chest burned, but he didn't speak. He just met Shoto's eyes. You're not the only one fighting more than just an opponent. Endeavor scoffed, fire crackling as he stepped back. Do what you want. Just remember, everyone out there is watching. With that, he turned and left, the air cooling as his flames vanished down the hall. Shoto exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. Then quietly he said, See you in the ring, Midoriya? Izuku nodded, gloves creaking as he tugged them tighter. Yeah. Hikari watched them both, a flicker of worry tightening her jaw. This isn't just a match. It's a collision. Semi-finals match, Katsuki Bakugo vs Hitoshi Shinso. The crowd was already chanting Bakugo's name when the two stepped onto the stage. Bakugo's hands crackled with sparks, explosions already popping in his palms. Across from him, Shinso looked like he just rolled out of bed, hands in his pockets, bored eyes tracking Bakugo lazily. Present Mike shouted over the roar. "Oh, this is the one, Bakugo, boom boom, versus Shinso the Mindbender. Let's see if raw firepower can outrun the mind games." Midnight's whip cracked. "Begin." Bakugo shot forward instantly, explosions blasting from his hands like cannons. Shinso darted aside, the blast missing by inches. Another explosion, another sidestep. Shinso moved with surprising sharpness, never fast enough to look flashy, just enough to stay out of reach. "You're predictable," Shinso called, voice carrying as he slipped past another blast. Loud, angry, explosive, it's all to cover up what's underneath. Bakugo snarled, explosions growing hotter, faster. He launched himself into the air and dove, detonation blooming across the arena. Shinso rolled clear, landing in a crouch. "You called Midoriya a villain, didn't you?" Shinso's tone was casual, needling. "Funny. Sounds more like projection to me." Bakugo's jaw tightened. He didn't speak, he roared and hurled another blast. Shinso ducked, smoke billowing across the stone. You see him get up after everything and it terrifies you. Shinso slipped between two smaller explosions, hair singed at the edges. Because if someone everyone calls a monster can keep going, what excuse do you have? The crowd was holding its breath now. Bakugo was faster, stronger, louder, but Shinso refused to break. His voice was calm, relentless. "You don't hate Midoriya because he's weak." Shinso sidestepped a shockwave, boots skidding. "You hate him because deep down, you know he's stronger than you'll ever admit." That snapped something. Bakugo's eyes blazed, teeth grit so hard his jaw shook. He rocketed forward in a thunderous blast, screaming, "Shut up, I'm better than D." The words echoed across the arena. And in the next instant, Bakugo froze midair, body locking, explosions dying in his palms. His eyes glazed. The stadium gasped. Shinso exhaled, finally straightening, eyes glowing faintly. His voice was calm, cutting. "Walk." Bakugo landed stiffly, boots scraping the ground as he marched toward the boundary. The crowd went wild, half disbelief, half shock. Thud. Out of bounds. The whistle blew. Winner, Hitoshi Shinso. Present Mike howled, voice almost breaking. He took Bakugo's fury, dodged every blast, and turned the words back on him. Bakugo's eyes snapped clear the moment he crossed the line. He whirled, roaring with rage, explosions detonating across the floor, but it was too late. The loss was sealed. "No!" he roared, detonating an explosion so loud the floor cracked beneath his boots. "This isn't over. You think I'm losing to a quirk like that?" He lunged toward Shinso, palms blazing. And a pink cloud burst around him. Midnight's whip snapped out, cracking across his chest as her somnambulant gas enveloped him. "Sleep," she commanded sharply. Bakugo staggered, still snarling, explosions sputtering in his palms. He tried to force one more detonation, then collapsed face first with a final hiss of smoke. The crowd went dead silent for a beat. Then the noise crashed back, wild and divided. He would have killed him. No, Midnight saved it. Shinso actually won fair, Bakugo just couldn't take it. Still a scary quirk. Shinso didn't flinch. He just turned his back, sliding his hands into his pockets again, muttering low enough for the arena mics to catch. "Guess that's the difference. I don't need explosions to win. Just control." Midnight dragged Bakugo's limp form toward the edge, shaking her head. "Hotheads like you are exactly why rules exist." The stadium roared again, split between awe and unease. Shinso walked off, calm, collected, the first to ever knock Bakugo Katsuki down without even laying a hand on him. Match: Izuku Midoriya vs Shoto Todoroki. The arena was frozen in silence before the match even began. Everyone knew the stakes. Everyone whispered about the monster stepping onto the field. Midnight cracked her whip. "Begin." Todoroki moved first. A tidal wave of ice surged across the arena, jagged spikes rushing to bury Izuku where he stood. Izuku didn't retreat. His mother's quirk tugged sharp, ice particles ripped out of the ice's seams, slabs collapsing sideways. He darted low, breaking gaps in Todoroki's walls with brutal precision. "You're strong," Izuku shouted over the shattering ice. "But you're lying to yourself." Todoroki's eyes narrowed. "You don't know me." Izuku's voice cracked with something deeper than anger. "Don't I? My whole life I've been told I was a villain. That I couldn't touch anyone without killing them. That I was cursed. You think I don't know what it's like to hate your own quirk?" To want to hide it, bury it, lock it away? The crowd murmured, whispers carrying across the stands. Izuku slammed a slab of debris down to block another ice surge, chest heaving. His voice rose raw. But I don't get the choice to hide mine. Every time I reach out, people flinch. Every time I try to help, I'm called dangerous. So I learned to live with it. To own it. Because the world already decided what I am. He pointed at Todoroki, eyes blazing. And you've got power people dream of. You can freeze, you can burn, and you're throwing half of it away because you're scared of what it means. You think that makes you better than me? It just makes you a coward. The words cut deep. Todoroki's jaw clenched. Ice cracked beneath his boots. Shut up, he roared as he was heavily breathing. God damn it, Todoroki, it's your quirk. Something just clicked in his head and fire exploded from his left side. The arena erupted. Flames engulfed the stage, washing over Izuku in a searing wave. Present Mick's voice boomed, half shocked, half thrilled. Fire. He's using fire. Todoroki's finally ignited his other half. A flash of flame came burrowing down on Izuku, and instead of dodging her, embraced with open arms. The blaze swallowed Izuku whole. He hit the ground screaming, flesh blistering, skin blackening from the heat. For a heartbeat, it looked like he was finished. The crowd gasped as though they were watching someone be burned alive. And then, before the stunned eyes of the crowd, his burns began to crawl shut. Raw skin bubbled, then smooth. Scars closed. Muscles stitched themselves back together. The whispers were instant. Regeneration. No wonder they called him a villain. What TV hell is this? Izuku staggered upright, smoke rising from his skin, tears in his eyes. His voice was ragged but defiant. See this, Todoroki? This is what embracing yourself looks like. It's ugly. It hurts. But it's mine. And I don't run from it. He charged through the flames, ripping debris up as cover, forcing his way past the ice and fire. Todoroki faltered, still reeling from his own outburst. Izuku slammed into him shoulder first, yanking the ground out from under him with help from his mother quirk. Todoroki toppled, crashing out of bounds with a thunderous crack. As Izuku delivered a deceiver drop kick. Thud. The whistle blew. Winner, Izuku Midoriya. Present Mike roared, the stadium splitting between cheers and horrified gasps. Izuku stood in the center, chest heaving, smoke curling off his half-burned, half-healed body. His eyes locked on Todoroki. You're not broken because of your father. You're broken because you're too scared to use what's yours. Stop running. Or you'll end up worse than him. Todoroki stared back, fire still flickering weakly at his side. For the first time he didn't look cold. He looked furious. And afraid. Izuku turned away, his scars knitting even as the whispers in the crowd grew louder. Monster. Villain. Or maybe hero? Tunnel before Izuku versus Shinso. The muffled roar of the stadium echoed down the concrete hall. Izuku adjusted his gloves, tugging them tight, the leather creaking with each pull. His breathing was steady, but his eyes kept flicking toward the light spilling in from the arena entrance. Hikari leaned against the wall nearby, arms folded, her sharp gaze never leaving him. For a long moment neither spoke. Then, softly, she broke the silence. You ready? How confident are you? Izuku let out a slow breath, flexing his fingers. Confident? He shook his head. Not really. His green eyes hardened as he looked up. But I'm not going to play by their rules. I'm gonna fight my way. Win or lose, it'll be on my terms. Hikari's lips curved into a faint smile. She stepped closer, reached out and squeezed his hand, firm, warm, steady. That's the answer I wanted, she murmured. Show them who you really are. Izuku blinked at her, the corner of his mouth twitching like he wanted to smile but didn't quite manage it. Still, the weight in his chest eased. Present Mick's voice boomed from the stadium beyond. Next match, Midoriya Izuku versus Shinso Hitoshi. Hikari released his hand, smirk tugging at her lips. Go. Shake their world. Izuku pulled his gloves one last time and nodded. Yeah. My way. He turned toward the blinding light of the arena, the roar of the crowd rising to meet him. Final match, Izuku Midoriya versus Hitoshi Shinso. The arena trembled with energy. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching, cameras fixed. Shinso walked into the ring with his usual lazy posture, hands in his pockets. Izuku stepped in from the opposite tunnel, hood low, gloves pulled tight. The stadium roared. Nomu Kid versus the Brainwasher. Two villains in the making. Why is this even allowed? Midnight raised her whip, but Shinso lifted a hand before she could start. Wait. His voice carried, calm but cutting. We're not fighting. Not like this. Gasps rippled through the stands. Izuku's eyes flicked to him. Shinso gave a faint shrug. They already call us villains. So why not show them something else? Izuku's throat tightened. He looked at the crowd, at the heroes in the stands, the cameras flashing, the thousands of eyes staring at him with fear, disgust, pity. He took a deep breath. The gloves creaked as he clenched his fists. And then he spoke. You want to know my quirk? The real one? Fine. I absorb. Life. Memories. Quirks. A single touch and I take what makes you, you. If I hold on too long, it kills. That's what I am. That's why you whisper villain every time I walk by. The crowd shifted uneasily. A reporter's pen froze mid-scratch. Izuku's voice rose, raw but steady. I was quirkless once. I was told I had no future. Then my quirk awakened and suddenly I was worse than quirkless. I was dangerous. I was a monster. The system failed me at every turn. Foster homes that feared me. Heroes who called me a villain in the making. A society that stamped dangerous on my file before I even understood what I was. Shinso watched him quietly, hands still in his pockets. Izuku stepped forward, raising his voice, each word hammering into the silence. But listen closely, I am not a monster. I'm not weak. I'm not what you decided I'd be. I will be the hero who saves the quirkless. The ones with weak quirks. The outcasts. The ones you've thrown away. The ones you've locked up because they scared you. I will lead my people, all of us who were forgotten, into a future where everyone will be saved. No matter what quirk they were born with. No matter what society stamped on their file. The stadium went silent. Thousands of breaths held. Then somewhere in the stands a lone voice cheered. Then another. And another. The crowd fractured, some clapping, some booing, some whispering in fear. The heroes in the faculty box exchanged grim looks. Reporters scribbled like mad. But far away in living rooms and alleys and shelters, the message landed. The quirkless, the unstable, the forgotten, they heard him. And for the first time they felt seen. Midnight's whip dropped limply to her side. So, the winner is... Shinso cut her off, his lazy grin twisting sharp. Midoriya. No question. The roar of the crowd exploded again, a storm of awe and outrage. Izuku stood tall in the center of it all, hood low, chest heaving. His thoughts burned like fire. They'll call me villain. They'll call me monster. But now the world knows who I am. And I won't stop until I save the people no one else will. The next morning, every channel played the same footage. Izuku standing in the ring, hood low, gloves tight, his voice raw but steady. I will lead my people, all of us who were forgotten, into a future where everyone will be saved. News anchors argued. Was this an inspiring call for equality? Or a threat against the hero system itself? Panelists shouted over each other. A boy with quirk absorption cannot be allowed to be a hero. He's giving hope to the voiceless, that terrifies people more than his quirk does. Social media boiled. Hashtag villain quirk trended alongside hashtag hero Midoriya. Quirkless kids shared his speech on repeat. Pro-heroes issued careful statements, some praising his potential, others warning against romanticizing dangerous quirks. And in shelters, back alleys, and cramped apartments, people whispered his name like a prayer. UA's classroom buzzed with tension. Students scrolled through their phones, screens glowing with articles plastered with Izuku's face. He's everywhere. Kaminari muttered. Like, top of every feed. Zero frowned. Half of them are calling him a future villain, half are calling him the next All Might. It's insane. Uraraka glanced toward Izuku, worry etched in her face. How do you even deal with that? Izuku sat at his desk, gloves creaking faintly as he gripped his notebook. Hood shadowed his eyes, but he didn't answer. The silence was thick until Bakugo slammed his palm against the desk. Sparks hissed. Deku didn't win. That purple-haired brainwasher gained me, then he handed him first. Then Aizawa's scarf cracked against the air. He stepped into the room, bandages still peeking from under his uniform after the USJ. His voice was flat, calm, but sharp. Enough. The world's already tearing him apart. We don't need it in here too. Bakugo scowled, sparks dying. Aizawa scanned the room, eyes narrowing slightly before he continued. Media fallout or not, we keep moving. Starting today, you'll all be preparing for internships. I'm about to show you the offers that everyone got. Yet before Aizawa tuned on the TV, he made quick eye contact with Izuku. Remembering what happened last week. Flashback, UA conference room. The room smelled of stale coffee and tension. A line of government officials from the Hero Public Safety Commission, HPSC, sat across from Nizu and Aizawa, papers stacked, tablets glowing with paused video stills. The still image showed Midoriya clinging to the Nomu at USJ, his bare hands locked tight, veins bulging, the monster's jaw split wide in a scream. One official tapped the screen. "This footage is already circulating online. You want us to ignore this? A child draining a bioengineered weapon alive? It looks like torture." Aizawa's jaw tightened beneath his scarf. It was torture, for him. That fight saved lives. The official ignored him. Whether or not he killed the creature is irrelevant. What the public sees is enough. His quirk, he glanced at his notes. Life absorption, memory absorption, quirk absorption. That is not a hero's quirk. It is predatory. Nizu's voice was polite, cheerful even, though his tail flicked against the chair leg. And yet, without it, we would have lost half a class of first years. Context matters. Not to headlines, another official cut in sharply. Effective immediately, Midoriya will receive 0 internship offers. Every agency was instructed to stay clear. We cannot allow a boy with that ability to be paraded as a rising star. He was the winner of the sports festival. He is already a rising star. Especially with his speech at the end. Questioned Nizu. Aizawa's eye narrowed. "You're punishing him for surviving and being honest." "We are containing him," the man corrected. "His internship will be with UA staff only and HPSC liaisons. Under constant oversight." "That will backfire," Aizawa said flatly. "He already feels caged." "You're confirming it." The officer snapped his folder shut. "Better a caged monster than a loose one. It's not just his quirk but his words needs to be caged as well." Silence followed as the men left, shoes clicking sharply against the tile. The door shut. The hum of the lights filled the void. Aizawa exhaled, tired and furious, his voice a growl. "They're making him exactly what they're afraid of." Nizu's small black eyes glimmered. "Fear has a way of shaping futures, Shota. Whether we like the shape or not." Back to present day, Class 1A. The board flickered to life, names scrolling across in bright digital text. Cheers and groans erupted around the room as students compared numbers. Bakugo's got thousands. Kaminari gawked. "Shoto's right behind him," Yaoyorozu added, adjusting her reading glasses. Even Ojiro, Tokoyami, and Hikari had a lot offers lined neatly beside their names. And then at the bottom corner of the board, Midoriya Izuku, 0. He was the only one without an offer. The murmurs were immediate. 0? But he won the whole thing. Guess nobody wants to risk it. That sucks, but I can see why. Izuku didn't move. He sat stiff at his desk, head down, gloves creaking faintly as he clenched them against his notebook. Aizawa's gaze lingered on him longer than the rest. He already knew why the board was empty. He could still hear the government official's words in that smoke-filled room. Better a caged monster than a loose one. It made his stomach twist. But he couldn't tell Midoriya that. Couldn't tell him the truth, that every agency had been ordered to look away. That his fate had been decided by men in suits who saw him as a threat instead of a child. Instead, he cleared his throat and spoke flatly as if nothing were wrong. "For those without offers, you'll still be placed. Your internships will be handled internally through UA. That includes you, Midoriya." The murmurs dulled. The silence after was heavier than any cheer. Izuku finally lifted his head, meeting Aizawa's eyes across the room. His expression was unreadable, but his jaw was tight. Aizawa held the look for a moment, then turned back to the class. "I'm sorry, kid. They're already pushing you into the corner. I just hope you find a way not to break inside it." From the side row, Hikari glanced at Izuku and frowned, her eyes soft with concern. She could see the way his shoulders were too still, the way his hands pressed against the desk just a little too hard. "Now because you will be out in the field you will need to have hero names. Who's on her way now? Clear off your desk and get white boards." When the class finally spilled into chatter again as they got ready, she leaned close and whispered, "It's not fair. You deserve better." Izuku gave a small shrug, his voice too calm. "Doesn't matter." But Hikari caught it, the flicker in his eyes, the hurt buried beneath the words. The desks were cleared, the whiteboard behind them scrawled in looping letters. "Your hero name is your brand." Midnight twirled her whip lazily, grinning as the students shifted nervously. "All right, kids. Today's the day. Pick a name that defines you, what the world will call you for the rest of your career." Excitement rippled through the class. Kaminari held up Charge Bolt. Yaoyorozu's card read Creati. Tokoyami proudly announced Tsukuyomi. Even Bakugo snarled as he scribbled King Explosion Murder before Midnight shot it down with a sigh. Laughter, nerves, and applause echoed as each name was shared. Then the room quieted as Aizawa's tired voice cut in. Midoriya, you're next. All eyes turned to him. Izuku stood slowly, his hood shadowing his face, gloves creaking as he gripped the name card. His throat was tight. Izuku stared at the blank card in his hand. His mind flashed with memories, quirkless, dangerous, monster, stamped on his record. Neighbors whispering. Foster homes shoving him away. Heroes debating whether to cage him. His jaw clenched. I don't even know who I'm supposed to be. The silence stretched. From her desk, Hikari leaned forward just slightly, her green-gold eyes steady on him. No pity. Just quiet encouragement. Izuku finally raised the card, blank except for his handwriting, crooked, hesitant. I don't know yet. His voice was steady but low. Not something flashy. Not something fake. When I figure out what kind of hero I really am, then I'll name myself. The class stayed quiet. Midnight tilted her head, whip dangling loosely. That's an answer too, kid. Aizawa's gaze lingered on Izuku for a long moment before he moved on. Fine. For now, Midoriya remains Midoriya. The tension broke as the next student stepped up, but Hikari's eyes lingered on him, soft and searching. She could see the way his hand still shook faintly on the edge of the card. Izuku sat down, lowering his head. Inside, his thoughts burned. They already named me a villain. They already branded me dangerous. But when the time comes, I'll choose my own name. And it'll be one they can't ignore. The sun was low, painting the dorm courtyard in streaks of orange and gold. Most students had already drifted inside, but Izuku sat hunched on a bench near the edge, hood shadowing his face, gloved hands clasped tight. A shadow fell over him, and then Hikari sat down beside him, casually leaning back. She didn't say anything at first, just reached over and rubbed slow circles across his back. You know, she teased lightly, you had the perfect chance to pick some edgy brooding hero name. Shadow Claw the Collector, anything. And you went with, I don't know yet. Izuku let out a dry huff, halfway between a sigh and a laugh. Didn't feel right. Not yet. Hikari tilted her head, her green-gold eyes catching the sunlight. Fair enough. Honestly? Better than Bakugo's suggestion. The crowd would have rioted. Silence stretched, comfortable but heavy. Izuku's gaze dropped to his gloves. Still doesn't matter. No agencies wanted me. Zero offers. Even after everything. Her hand stilled on his back, then pressed firmly. You think that means anything? You're not the one failing here. They are. He shook his head, voice low. Feels like I'm just holding you back. You should have gotten something better than staying stuck at UA with me. That earned him a sharp nudge to the ribs. Hikari leaned forward, eyes narrowed but warm. First off, don't flatter yourself. My internship is here because it needs to be. Second, this isn't about you holding me back. It's about me pushing forward. Izuku blinked. What? She folded her arms, gaze steady. You saw the USJ. The sports festival. I can dampen quirks, yeah. But against people like Nomo? Or villains who fight like you do? Or quirks that take too long to suppress? Suppression just isn't enough. I need tools. Strategy. A way to hold my ground. Her lips quirked into a sly half-smile. And that means learning how to use a variant of my dad capture weapon. I didn't want to at first, I wanted to carve my own unique path but... Her expression softened. The world made it clear I have to. She leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his. Don't twist it into something it's not. I chose this. And if you don't like it... Her smirk returned. Then you'll just have to spar harder so I don't outdo you. For the first time all day, Izuku felt a faint tug at the corner of his mouth. You're impossible. And you're dramatic. She nudged him again, softer this time. We'll survive this. Together. The sky deepened, stars flickering into view. Izuku pulled his hood lower, but his chest felt lighter, if only for a moment. Later that night, the courtyard lights glowed faintly as Izuku and Hikari lingered on the bench. The rest of their class had already left for their internships, just leaving Izuku and Hikari at UA. She was also staying at the dorms. Granted, there weren't actual dorms but emergency housing for local communities in a disaster. Nevertheless, they were very similar to dorms. She was still teasing him about his lack of a hero name when a new voice cut through. So I'm not the only one stuck on campus, said a voice sarcastically. They looked up. Hitoshi Shinso stood nearby, hands shoved in his pockets, his tired eyes fixed on them. Hikari straightened. You too. Yeah, Shinso muttered, walking closer. Aizawa's taking me on for my internship. Says I need to learn his capture style, to catch up to the hero classes, and stop looking like I rolled out of bed at an alleyway. Which is fair. His gaze flicked to Izuku. Guess he figured we're the same kind of case. Izuku's hood shifted. Villain quirks. Shinso gave a humorless smirk. Exactly. Brainwashing, absorption. Doesn't matter what we actually do with them. People hear our quirks and decide who we are. Hikari folded her arms, sharp green-gold eyes narrowing. That's stupid and you know it, you guys are not in that box. Both boys glanced at her. She leaned forward, her tone steady. You're not a villain, kid. And neither are you. People can say it all they want, but I don't care. You two are training under my dad, which means you've got a shot, and you're going to take it. End of story. You're more than just villain kids. For a moment, silence stretched. Shinso blinked, caught off guard. Izuku studied her, chest tight. You really believe that? Izuku asked softly. Of course I do. Her mouth curved into a faint smirk. And if either of you start moping, I'll spar you until you stop. That earned the smallest huff of laughter from Izuku, and even Shinso cracked a faint grin. From the courtyard gate, Aizawa's voice cut through, dry as ever. Good. You'll need that attitude. None of you get special treatment. You'll train harder than the rest or you'll fall behind. Midoriya, Shinso, Hikari. You're with me. His scarf hung loose around his shoulders, but his eyes were sharp. Capture weapons. Control drills. Combat survival. Quirk training, you'll learn to stay alive and keep others alive. Starting tomorrow. The three exchanged glances, Shinso smirking faintly, Hikari standing tall, and Izuku tugging his hood low as determination settled in. For the first time, it didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a beginning. The next morning, the ropes cracked through the air, smacking against padded dummies with heavy thuds. Sweat dripped down Izuku's forehead as he tightened his grip on the weighted scarf, trying to mimic the way Aizawa snapped his weapon with sharp precision. Again, Aizawa ordered, his voice flat but steady. You're overcompensating with your wrist, Midoriya. Capture weapons are about momentum, not muscle. Izuku grit his teeth, adjusted, and snapped the scarf again. This time it looped around the dummy's arm, cinching tight. Better. Across the mat, Hikari's rope lashed forward with quick, clean precision. Her posture was balanced, controlled. Aizawa watched quietly for a moment, then gave a slight nod. Good. You're treating it like an extension of your quirk suppression. Direct, efficient. Keep refining that. Shinso's rope, meanwhile, tangled awkwardly around his legs for the third time in a row. He swore under his breath, yanking at the knots. Aizawa didn't sigh, but his scarf twitched around his shoulders. You're fighting the weapon instead of letting it fight for you. Relax your arm. Let the weight carry it. Shinso tried again, slower this time. The rope looped wide, grazing the dummy before cinching against its leg. His grin was faint but real. Ah, got it. Aizawa stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over all three of them. Listen carefully. These capture drills aren't about turning you into copies of me. They're about building control. Awareness. If you're serious about being heroes, you'll need tools that work for you. Not just what I hand you. He gestured toward the racks of gear, different materials, lengths, weights. Experiment. Adapt. Find your own version of this weapon. Something that complements your quirks and the way you fight. Izuku frowned slightly, his gloved hands tightening around the scarf. My own version? Aizawa's expression didn't change, but his voice softened just enough to carry weight. You'll never survive trying to be me. You'll survive by figuring out what kind of fighter you are, and how to make your tools reflect that. Hikari's eyes flicked to her rope, then back to her father. So it's not about copying, it's about creating. Exactly. Aizawa stepped back, scarf coiling around his shoulders. You've got a week. Show me something that's yours. Izuku looked down at the scarf in his hands, thoughts racing, gears turning the same way they always did when he tinkered. He imagined metal, hinges, tension springs, a tool that could be weapon and shield in one. Something he could call his own. Shinso smirked faintly, twirling his rope with new determination. Guess I better stop tripping myself then. And Hikari, calm and sharp as ever, coiled her scarf neatly, a sly grin playing at her lips. Don't worry. Mine will be cleaner than both of yours. Afternoon. Izuku thought it'd be a good idea to head to the support lab to get some ideas and help when it came to making their own version of capture weapons. The lab smelled faintly of solder, oil, and burnt rubber. Half-built gadgets littered every surface, wires dangling like vines. Sparks crackled from a bench where Mei Hatsum crouched, welding goggles reflecting bursts of light. Ah, excuse me, Izuku started nervously. Mei shot up immediately, grinning wide. Customer alert. Or better yet, test dummies. She shoved her goggles to her forehead, eyes gleaming. So what's it gonna be this time? Jetpacks? Grappling gauntlets? Arm-mounted grenade launchers? Hikari raised both brows. We just need help with capture weapons. Mei blinked. Then she grinned wider. Oh, capture gear. Simple in theory but oh so sexy in execution. Come in, come in. The trio stepped cautiously inside. Shinso muttered under his breath, why do I feel like I'm about to regret this? Izuku shook his head quickly, clutching the standard-issue scarf Aizawa had given him. No, think about it. A scarf works because it's versatile. Binding, pulling, redirecting momentum. But it wastes time if it's just capture rope. Mei blinked then grinned. Oh, Broccoli Boy has a point. Keep going. Izuku set the scarf down on the bench, his gloves creaking faintly as he leaned forward. If I combine it with my multi-tool, I can eliminate that wasted time. The grip becomes the anchor. The cord retracts directly into the handle. Modular ends mean it can switch from hook to magnet to clamp depending on the fight. He grabbed a marker and sketched quickly on the nearest whiteboard, neat, precise lines outlining a compact reel system with interchangeable heads. This way I can restrain, reposition, or shield without swapping weapons. It becomes part of my fighting rhythm instead of something I have to stop and deploy. Mei's grin widened, eyes gleaming. You're not just smart, you're scary smart. Compact, efficient, modular, you're thinking 3 steps ahead. Shinso, watching from the corner, raised a brow. So, basically, Batman with homework. Izuku flushed but kept going, ignoring him. If I design the tool to take stress along the frame instead of the coil, it won't snap under strain. I can reinforce it with a segmented steel polymer blend. That way it won't break when I... Mei cut him off with a delighted cackle. Yes. Finally, someone who speaks my love language. We'll call it the Midoriya Mark I Capture Multi-Tool. Izuku blinked, startled. Wait, no, that name. Shinso interrupted Hun as he leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. I just need mine not to strangle me. Mei squinted at him, then smirked. Brainwasher boy, right? You need a weighted cord you can hide in plain sight. Something subtle. Something you whip out the second you get someone to answer you. She tapped her chin. Retractable yo-yo style? That's flashy. Or maybe a reinforced scarf that looks ordinary until... Yo-yo? Seriously? Shinso groaned, but his lips twitched. Hikari stepped forward, her rope neatly coiled over her shoulder. Mine needs to be efficient. Direct. Fast lock, no wasted movement. Something I can snap and restrain before the enemy realizes their quirk's being suppressed. Mei's grin softened into something almost admiring. Clean design. Minimal flair. Deadly in the right hands. Yeah, I like you. She jotted notes with rapid strokes. Okay. 3 different builds. 3 different brains. This is going to be fun. Mei clapped her hands. Yes. This is the good stuff. I'll have a prototype ready in 3 days. Might explode. Hopefully won't. Can't promise. Izuku's heart pounded as he held the rough sketch in his hands. It echoed the design he'd first pieced together in the scrapyard, the one he'd carried with him into UA. For the first time, it felt undeniable. It belonged to him. The next day, the air was tense, quieter than usual. No capture ropes, no dummies. Just Izuku standing in the center of the mat, his gloves tugged halfway off. Hikari stood across from him, arms loose at her sides, while Aizawa watched from the corner, scarf coiled but ready. You're not doing this alone, Aizawa said flatly. If anything goes wrong, I erase you. Hikari dampens. Understood. Izuku's throat was dry. He nodded. Understood. He tugged the glove from his right hand, flexing his bare fingers. His heart hammered. For 4 years, the thought of touching someone, really touching them, had been terrifying. Hikari stepped forward, calm, her aura already faintly humming around her. Her green-gold eyes locked onto his. Just a second, Izuku. Nothing more. He swallowed, then reached out. Their fingertips brushed. Heat flared up his arm, and in an instant, threads of her flowed into him. Muscle memory, reflexes, the faint hum of suppression aura sparking in his chest. His breath hitched, his skin crawling with borrowed awareness. For a heartbeat, he could feel the field she always carried, like static over skin. Izuku yanked his hand back with a gasp, stumbling a step. I felt it. Hikari exhaled, steady and unflinching. And you let go. That's control. Aizawa's eye narrowed. Again. They reset. This time, Izuku reached out with more certainty. The contact was brief, a flicker of aura brushing through him. His hand trembled, but he pulled back cleanly. No collapse. No screaming. Just control. His chest burned with something fierce. I can do it. I can actually... Not done yet. Aizawa cut him off. He nodded toward himself. Your quirk won't matter if you freeze when it counts. Try with me. Izuku's breath caught. Why, you're serious? I'm standing right here, Aizawa muttered, stepping forward. His scarf twitched. 1 second. No longer. Izuku hesitated, then pressed his palm briefly against Aizawa's forearm. And in a flash the world dimmed. The hum of quirks, the spark of Hikari's aura, even the faint static of the lights overhead, all of it went quiet. For a split second he could feel what it was to erase everything around him. Then Aizawa pulled back, his own eyes narrowing. Good. You didn't cling. That's the difference between survival and slaughter. Izuku staggered, clutching his chest, trembling not from fear but from the sheer power coursing through him. I did it. I really did it. Hikari stepped closer, her hand brushing his shoulder through his sleeve. You're not just surviving anymore, Izuku. You're learning. That's the difference. He looked at her, chest heaving, gloves dangling from his hand. For the first time in years he didn't feel like a monster touching someone. 2 days later. The mats were already scuffed and torn, dummies scattered in heaps. Aizawa stood off to the side, arms crossed, scarf hanging loose around his shoulders. His single eye tracked every movement without comment. Again, he said flatly. Hikari snapped her new capture cord forward. The capture cord was thinner than her father's but reinforced, built for speed. It lashed out like lightning. Hikari, snaring Izuku's wrist with her cord, leaning close. Caught you again. You really need to stop making it this easy for me. Izuku tugging against the hold, cheeks red. And maybe I just don't mind being caught. Hikari blinking, then smirking with a faint blush. Careful, Midoriya. Say things like that and I might not let go. Izuku blushes a little with his cheeks turning slight red. You're too obvious, she teased, lips curling. One slip and I've got you. Izuku smirked under his hood. Not yet. His free hand flicked his multi-tool open. With a quick twist, the cord inside snapped loose, maze design letting the tool double as a launcher. A hook shot out, clamping onto a discarded dummy's arm. Izuku yanked, using the pull to pivot his whole body. The sudden spin caught Hikari off balance, and she stumbled as Izuku used the momentum to wrap her legs in his cord. Hikari blinked, then snorted. Okay. That's clever. From the side, Shinso was already winding his own cord, a heavier scarf with weighted ends. His first throw missed completely, slapping uselessly against the floor. Damn it. Focus, Aizawa muttered. Shinso grit his teeth and tried again. This time the weight swung wide, catching Izuku's tool mid-spin. The cord snapped taut, wrenching the weapon from his grip. Izuku stumbled back, blinking. Shinso smirked. Guess I'm not useless after all. Not bad, Hikari admitted, tugging herself free of Izuku's cord. But you're slow on the draw. They reset positions, each with their new weapons in hand. Izuku tightened his gloves, heart pounding with something he hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not even anger, but excitement. This was training. This was control. For once he wasn't just surviving. He was building something that was his. From the sidelines, Aizawa finally spoke. Better. But don't get cocky. Tools are only as good as the hands that use them. Keep drilling. By the end of the week, I want you able to catch each other in under 5 seconds. The three glanced at each other, then nodded in unison. And for the first time, Izuku felt like he wasn't just a test subject or a cage specimen. He was part of something. Later that week, Aizawa stood with his scarf coiled loosely around his shoulders, his single eye sharp. Shinso was doing laps around the training room for not going to bed on time and staying up watching cat videos. Hikari faced Izuku across the mat, arms steady, though her lips pressed thin with tension. Izuku tugged one glove off, flexing his bare fingers. At USJ, I didn't let go until the Nomu stopped moving. That's how I know. If I keep holding, I can take everything. Permanently. Just like with my mom, by accident. His voice dropped, thick with regret. But I don't know how long it takes. I'm not going to test that. Not ever. Hikari nodded firmly. Then today isn't about pushing that far. It's about seeing what you can safely do. I'm here because I trust you. Izuku tugged his glove free, flexing his bare fingers. He and Hikari exchanged a quick look. They already knew 1 second was safe. Manageable. A flicker of her aura and her quirk for almost a minute and nothing more. This time, Aizawa's voice cut through the silence. Longer. Push it. Izuku hesitated, then pressed his hand to Hikari's wrist. 2 seconds. The suppression aura dug deeper into his chest, steady but heavier. Faint scraps of her focus bled into him, sparring drills, her stance, the way she centered her breath. Izuku pulled back quickly, exhaling hard. 2 minutes. Stronger. Clearer. Aizawa's gaze sharpened. Again. Izuku swallowed, then touched her again. 3 seconds, his eyes glowed brighter, hair rising faintly as his pulse hammered. Images slid across his mind, Hikari standing as a child in her father's shadow, frustration boiling as others dismissed her quirk. His breath caught for a moment, but he steadied himself and let go. For seconds, the current jolted sharper, pressing deeper into him. The memories struck harder, the sting of classmates' words, not hero material, the stubborn fire that kept her training anyway. Izuku's jaw tightened as Hikari swayed on her feet, her breath unsteady. For minutes, he murmured. Hikari steadied herself, jaw tight, and lifted her arm again. 1 more time, I can handle it. Izuku's throat locked. He didn't want to, but he pressed his fingers to her wrist. 5 seconds. The glow in his eyes blazed, arcs of static flickering off him. More of her flooded through his chest. Her father's voice pushing her harder, her mother's laugh in the kitchen, her own voice whispering, I want to be a hero anyway. His expression flickered with strain, a shadow across his face, then steadied. Hikari's knees buckled. She collapsed forward into him, breath ragged. Izuku ripped his hand back instantly, catching her by the shoulders before she hit the mat. Hikari? She leaned into him, pale but conscious, fighting to breathe evenly. Izuku held her steady, his own breath just a fraction heavier, his eyes burning faintly with everything he'd seen. 5 minutes. That's all it gave me. And it nearly dropped her. He shook his head. I won't go further. Not with her. Aizawa's scarf twitched, his voice flat. His eyes reverted back to their normal color as his own quirk turned off. Then that's your discipline. You know where the danger starts, even if you don't know the finish line. That's enough. Izuku looked down at his bare hand, trembling slightly. It's not just about how much I can take. It's about how much I shouldn't. Because if I push too far. His throat tightened. I might never let go. Hikari touched his shoulder, steady despite the faint strain in her own breathing. That's why you'll stop. Because you care more about us than about power. Aizawa's gaze lingered, unreadable. The commission won't care where that line is. They'll be waiting for you to cross it. Izuku slid his glove back on, jaw set, his eyes still faintly glowing. Then I'll draw my own line. 1 or 2 seconds. Enough to fight. Never enough to kill. But deep down he knew the truth. If it meant keeping everyone he cared about alive and safe, he would cross it again. UA dorm kitchen. Late evening. The kitchen was quiet, the only sound the low hum of the refrigerator. Shinso was already asleep upstairs, Aizawa's orders, leaving Izuku and Hikari alone at the counter. Izuku sat hunched forward, a cooling mug of tea untouched in front of him. His eyes were distant, lost in thoughts he didn't want but couldn't shake. Hikari leaned her cheek into her palm, watching him carefully. You've been quiet since training. He gave a small shrug, his voice low. I've been thinking about my mom. Her expression softened. After a beat she asked, what was she like? Izuku blinked, caught off guard before looking down at the mug. She was kind. Always tired, always working too much, but she never let it show. She liked making things, bracelets mostly. Beads, string, whatever she had. Said they were lucky charms. A faint smile tugged at his lips. I wore every single one. Even when they broke. Even when other kids teased me. His smile faltered, his voice tightening. I don't have any left. They're all gone. But I still remember my favorite. It was a thin red cord with this tiny pendant shaped like a bento box. She made it because I was always stealing bites from hers. Hikari laughed softly, her eyes warm. That's kind of perfect for you. Yeah, Izuku murmured. I kept it until the thread snapped. I must have tied it back together 5 times before it finally fell apart. After that, I never saw it again. The silence lingered, heavy but gentle. Hikari shifted closer, resting her hand lightly on his shoulder, grounding, steady. You remember it. That's what matters. She'd probably be happy knowing her favorite bracelet never really left you. Izuku swallowed hard, blinking rapidly, but for the first time all evening, his smile felt steady. Yeah, I think she would. Izuku's smile lingered faintly, warmed by the memory of his mother. Hikari's hand on his shoulder was steady, grounding, like she was anchoring him to the present. Someday, she said quietly, you'll have to tell me more. Not just the bracelets. I want to know everything about her. Izuku's breath caught. He looked up at her, startled by the softness in her eyes. You really mean that? Of course. Her voice was gentle, certain. She was part of you. If I want to understand you, I want to understand her too. His chest tightened. He nodded slowly, then lowered his gaze again, fingers curling around the edge of his mug. Then, I want the same. With you. Hikari tilted her head. With me? He swallowed, trying to force the words out. I don't just mean sparring together or studying or this. He gestured vaguely between them. I mean deeper. I want to know more about you. Who you are. Not just what everyone else sees. The words stumbled out clumsy but earnest. His cheeks flushed hot. But I don't know how to ask without sounding stupid. For a long moment, Hikari just studied him. Then her hand slipped from his shoulder down to his forearm, warm and steady. That doesn't sound stupid, she said softly. It sounds honest. Izuku looked at her, wide-eyed, caught off guard by how easy she made it sound. Hikari's eyes softened as she leaned back, folding her arms. Here I tell you something now. You said you wanted to know me deeper. So, here's something I don't tell people. Izuku sat up, wide-eyed, hanging on her words. My quirk? People always said it was useful. It could suppress others, keep a fight under control. But they also said it wasn't heroic. Not strong, not showy, not enough. She let out a short laugh without humor. For a while, I made everything about proving them wrong. Every spar, every class, every test. All I thought was, I'll force them to see me as a hero. Izuku's chest tightened. He knew the weight of being dismissed better than anyone. Her gaze shifted, softening. But then I saw something incredible. Someone with every reason to give up, someone the world had already written off, fight to save people anyway. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it mattered. It was the kind of saving no one else could do. That's when I realized, being a hero isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to the forgotten that they still matter. Izuku's eyes shone and he nodded fiercely. That's amazing, Hikari. Whoever that was, they must have been incredible. For a moment, she just looked at him, lips curving into the smallest smile. Yeah, he is. Izuku blinked, oblivious, completely missing the weight in her words. I'd like to meet him someday. Maybe I could learn from him too. Hikari bit back a laugh, shaking her head as she rose from her chair. You already have. Izuku frowned slightly, confused, but before he could ask, she patted his shoulder lightly on her way out. Good night, Izuku. He sat there a moment longer, staring after her, scratching the back of his neck. I don't get it. But, she seemed happy. Though her last smile lingered in his head, but he couldn't quite figure out what she meant. The creak of the stairs broke his thoughts. Shinso shuffled down in a t-shirt and sweatpants, rubbing at his eyes with one hand, a faint scowl on his face. He opened the fridge, grabbed the carton of milk, and poured himself a glass without a word. Only when he leaned against the counter did he glance at Izuku. You really didn't get it, did you? Izuku blinked, startled. Huh. Shinso took a slow sip, squinting at him over the rim of the glass. She wasn't talking about someone. She was talking about you. Izuku's face went scarlet. What? No, she said. She said she saw someone save the kind of people the world gave up on. That's you, genius. Shinso sighed, setting his glass down. Honestly, the way she looks at you, I'm surprised she didn't just spell it out. Izuku fumbled, hands waving nervously. And no, you're misreading it. Hikari doesn't, she wouldn't. Shinso rolled his eyes, picking up his glass again. Whatever helps you sleep, Midoriya. Just don't make her wait forever for you to catch up. He started back toward the stairs, muttering as he went. I came down for milk, not to watch a rom-com. Izuku sat frozen, tea forgotten in front of him, his thoughts spinning out of control. She was talking about me? The next morning. The kitchen glowed with soft light, cereal bowls and milk cartons scattered on the counter. Izuku fumbled through breakfast, still replaying Shinso's words from the night before in his head. She was talking about you. Morning, Hikari said, breezing in with her jacket slung casually over one shoulder. Gee, good morning, Izuku stammered, setting the milk down too hard. He winced, but Hikari only smirked and brushed past him to grab a glass of water, her shoulder brushing his on the way. The awkward heat in his face lingered, but so did something else, warmth that steadied him. She was here. No matter how messy everything felt, Hikari was the one thing that didn't. Izuku found himself smiling before he could stop it. "I'm glad you're here." Hikari paused, a little surprised by the softness in his voice, then returned it with a quiet, genuine smile. "Me too." From the corner of the room, Shinso scraped his chair back and reached for a glass of milk, one tired eye sliding toward them. A smirk tugged at his lips as he muttered, "Great. Fantastic. Just what I needed first thing in the morning." Live commentary on the world's slowest love confession. Izuku turned crimson, fumbling with his spoon. Hikari shot Shinso a mock glare, but the edges of her smile gave her away. Shinso snorted, shaking his head as he took a sip of milk. "Don't mind me. I'll just be over here, silently rooting for you while pretending to be annoyed." The dorm intercom crackled with Aizawa's monotone. "Training. 10 minutes. Don't be late." Shinso set his glass down with a sigh. "Perfect. Now I get to watch you two flirt and spar at the same time." Izuku groaned, burying his face in his hands as Hikari laughed, nudging him toward the door. UA training hall. The mats were quiet, the air tense. Aizawa leaned against the wall, scarf loose but ready. Midnight stood beside him, arms crossed, her usual teasing edge tempered by curiosity. Shinso sat off to the side, arms tucked in, watching without a word. Izuku stepped onto the mat with Hikari at his side, tugging one glove loose. His voice was low but steady. "Let me try something. Just a touch, no more than a minute. I won't take more than that, I just need to know if I can carry all of you at once." He went around the room, brushing his bare fingers against each of them. Hikari first, her suppression aura humming faintly in his chest. Shinso next, the thread of brainwashing pressing into his mind. Then Midnight, her somnambulist quirk sparking faintly before he pulled back. Each touch was brief, careful, with everyone watching closely. By the time he stepped back into the center of the mat, his breath was steady, but his eyes carried a fierce green glow, hair rising faintly with static. The air around him seemed to hum with borrowed power. "I can hold them fine," he said, flexing his fingers. His voice trembled with both strain and determination. "But I want to see if I can use more than two at once." The room went still. Midnight's brow arched, curiosity sharpening, while Aizawa's scarf twitched at his shoulders. Shinso muttered under his breath, "You're either insane or about to be." Aizawa's voice was clipped. "Don't collapse trying to prove a point." Midnight smirked faintly. "If he does, I'm sure your sweet daughter will make the landing soft." As she began to use her quirk and pink smoke started to come from her body. Izuku's eyes flared green, strands of hair lifting with the static hum. The weight settled in him easily like second skin. Midnight's lips curved as more of the sweet mist began to seep from her skin, only to sputter out, vanishing before it reached the air. Her eyes widened. "My somnambulist," he shut it down? Then his voice carried the sharp pull of Shinso's copied quirk. "Hikari, say something to me." She frowned. "What is this?" The tether snapped. Her pupils glazed, body stiffening under brainwash. Izuku grit his teeth, forcing his voice steady. "Raise your arm." Her arm lifted, jerky but obedient. That made two. Already his chest felt heavy as if every breath had to push through static. Sweat prickled his temple. "Two I can manage, 3 is the test." He stretched his free hand outward. A pencil across the mat rattled, scraped, then floated slowly into the air. His knuckles trembled as he drew it toward his palm. 3. His body shook under the strain. Green light flickered in his eyes like a failing bulb, his hair bristling as the suppression aura wavered. Hikari's arm faltered midair, brainwash slipping. Midnight gasped softly, realizing her quirk mist had been completely muted the whole time. Then the pencil slapped into Izuku's palm. He staggered to one knee, every thread snapping at once. Hikari jolted back to herself, Midnight's power flared back to life, and the pencil clattered to the floor. Izuku panted, sweat dripping down his jaw. "It works, but it's like holding 3 weights at once, all pulling different ways." Hikari knelt beside him, voice tight. "Izuku, you controlled me," while shutting her down, and still pulled that pencil. Midnight crouched, no teasing now, only seriousness in her eyes. "You're not just stacking quirks. You're operating them simultaneously. That's rare even in natural-born fusion quirks. And you're doing it raw." Shinso's voice was low, unsettled. "And if you can manage 3 now, someday it'll be 4. Aizawa's scarf twitched. His tone was calm but hard. "2 you can control. 3 nearly broke you. If you keep pushing without restraint, you won't last long. But if you master it. He let the thought hang, unfinished. Izuku dragged his glove back on with trembling hands, chest still heaving. Then I'll master it. Later that night. The common room was quiet except for the faint hum of the TV left on mute. Izuku sat at the low table, his notebook open but forgotten, his gloves folded neatly beside him. He could barely sit still, tapping his foot under the table, eyes glowing with excitement. I can't believe it, he said, grinning. Tomorrow we're actually going on patrol. Real patrol. Not drills, not simulations, helping people for real. His hands clenched into fists, shaking with the thought. Finally, I get to use all this training for something that matters. Across from him, Hikari leaned back in her chair, chin propped on her hand. A small smile tugged at her lips as she watched him, green-gold eyes soft. You look like you're about to explode. Izuku flushed, rubbing the back of his neck. This is what I wanted since I was a kid. To actually make a difference. From the couch, Shinso snorted. You two have been making a lot of differences this week. Mostly in how much time you spend staring at each other. Both Izuku and Hikari turned red. We weren't. Izuku started. Hikari rolled her eyes, though her cheeks were pink. Ignore him. Shinso smirked faintly, stretching out on the cushions. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just glad tomorrow means I actually get to leave this building. Patrol sounds like paradise compared to watching you two flirt in circles every night. Izuku groaned, covering his face with his notebook. Hikari chuckled softly and nudged Izuku's shoulder. Come on, you really are about to explode. You'll scare the civilians before you even help them. Izuku peeked over the top of the notebook, a shy grin spreading. Then I'll just have to show them I can do more than look scary. Shinso muttered, eyes closing. As long as I get fresh air, you two can flirt on rooftops for all I care. Day of the first patrol. 3 days till end of internship. The briefing room buzzed faintly with the hum of old fluorescents. Aizawa leaned against the table, arms crossed, scarf loose around his neck. Hikari and Shinso stood ready, both suited up, Shinso yawning like he hadn't slept in years. Izuku adjusted his gloves, notebook clipped to his side, heart beating faster. Aizawa's words still rang in his head. For the last 3 days of the internship we'll do patrols. See some real work. Field experience matters more than drills when prepared. For once, Izuku felt excited, ready to get out there and meet people. The door hissed open. 2 men in dark suits walked in, the sharp smell of cologne following them. Their smiles were polite, practiced, and completely empty. Midoriya Izuku, one said smoothly, glancing at a clipboard. We're from the HSCP. You'll remain here. Izuku blinked, confused. Sir? Aizawa-sensei told me. Change of plans, the second cut in, already gesturing toward the hall. Your condition requires monitoring. We'll be running tests while the others are on patrols for the remainder of the week. The words hit like cold water. Test, said Shinso. Aizawa straightened, voice low but sharp. He's with me. All 3 are. One official smiled tighter. Eraserhead, this isn't a request. You know his status. High risk. High priority. You can take the others. Midoriya stays here. Here's the paperwork signed by multiple government officials. Hikari's hands clenched at her sides. That's not fair. Quiet, the agent snapped, turning toward her with a sharp edge in his voice. Then, as though remembering where he stood, he softened his tone, but not his words. This doesn't concern you, miss. Stay in your place. Hikari's jaw tightened, but she bit her tongue. The student looked to Aizawa. For a heartbeat, they thought Aizawa might stay silent. Then Aizawa's eyes narrowed, glowing red. His hair spiked as his scarf twitched alive around his shoulders, the familiar flare of his quirk filling the air like static. Fuck that, he's my student. You don't get to dictate. Before the argument could snap into open conflict, the door creaked and Nizu padded in, tail swishing low. His voice was calm, but there was no cheer in it. Eraserhead. Aizawa turned his sharp glare on the principal, but Nizu only sighed, ears dipping. Not now. We can't afford a direct clash in the middle of UA. It would give the commission too much leverage. His gaze flicked toward Izuku, regret heavy in his small black eyes. I'm sorry. We'll revisit this. But not today. Aizawa's scarf stilled, though his jaw clenched hard enough to creak. We'll be back. We'll do a short patrol. The officials nodded crisply. No, make sure you take your full time as you already logged in for today. We'll make sure we're efficient with our time. Izuku's stomach twisted. Efficient? Another word that never meant him. As Hikari and Shinso followed Aizawa out with Nizu, Hikari's eyes lingered on Izuku's. Her jaw was tight, fury written in every line of her face. Shinso muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Izuku to catch. Cage looks nicer when they call it training. The door shut. Izuku was left standing in the silence, the two suits waiting expectantly. His fists clenched in his sleeves as his heart pounded. Patrol. Heroes. Real work. All stripped away with a single order. The lab wasn't in some distant facility, it was in a side wing of UA that was quickly and clearly, a classroom gutted and refitted with cold white walls, restraints bolted to the floor and cameras blinking in the corners. The main entrance of the door read, UA HPSC Joint Research Annex, Temporary. Izuku sat in the center chair, stripped of his gloves, the sterile smell clinging to his skin. He wasn't out with Aizawa, Hikari, and Shinso on patrol. He wasn't training with classmates. He was here with the suits. Midoriya Izuku, one of the officials said crisply, flipping a clipboard open. We'll begin with transfer calibration. Contact duration, replication accuracy, and recovery time. Izuku's jaw tightened. They make it sound so clean. Like I'm not about to touch another person's life. Standing at the door were two guards that vest red Hosu prison guard. The first prisoner shuffled in, shackled, escorted by two guards. His quirk sparked faintly at his fingertips, weak from sedation. Contact, the official ordered. Izuku's stomach twisted, but he obeyed, brushing the man's arm with a single fingertip. The surge hit, power snapping into his body. He yanked his hand back immediately before the man's knees buckled. Minimal transfer, one of the suits muttered. Note, subject withholding. Subject. The word burned. More prisoners followed. A woman with glowing hands. A man whose skin hardened like stone. Another who could stretch his arms. Each time, Izuku made it nothing more than a tap. Just enough to satisfy them. Just enough so the prisoners didn't feel drained. He could feel the suits watching. They want me to take more. They want me to prove I'm dangerous enough to justify this cage. Then the tray appeared. Syringes. Surgical gloves. We'll need a blood sample, the lead official said calmly. And a skin graft. Izuku froze. No. The official blinked. Excuse me? I'm not giving you that. His fists clenched tight, trembling, but his voice cut sharp through the sterile air. You're not sticking needles in me. Pause. The officials exchanged glances, not surprised, not angry. Just clinical. Resistance noted, one said, pen scratching against paper. Psychological noncompliance. Izuku's teeth ground together. Noncompliance. Like I'm a faulty machine. His eyes flicked to their wrists, their throats. For half a heartbeat he imagined reaching out, pulling their quirks, their lives, their smug superiority right out of them. Not the prisoners. No. But he didn't. Not yet. By the time they were finished, his body buzzed with a dozen half-faded quirks, his head aching with memories he didn't want, his heart pounding with rage he couldn't let go. He pulled his gloves back on, slowly, deliberately. You wanted to see what I can do, he muttered under his breath. But you'll never see all of it. The official smiled thinly, scribbling one last note. We'll know soon enough. And for the first time, Izuku realized, the walls of UA weren't built to protect him anymore. They were built to contain him. UA dorms, late evening. The door creaked open and the patrol team stepped inside, boots scuffed, jackets damp from drizzle. Aizawa tugged his scarf loose, exhaustion etched into the lines of his face. Shinso trailed behind him, yawning, while Hikari carried the faint buzz of adrenaline still clinging from the field. Izuku was already in the lounge, hunched on the couch with his notebook balanced on his knees. His gloves were on as always, pen scratching in short bursts. He didn't look up when they entered. Hikari dropped onto the armrest beside him. So, what did they make you do while we were gone? Izuku's pen paused, but only for a heartbeat. He shook his head, forcing a small smile. Nothing worth talking about. I'm fine. Shinso pulled out a chair backward and straddled it, eyes narrowing. That's a lie. You look like you've been chewing glass. What happened? I said I'm fine. Izuku's voice was calm, too calm. The pen scratched again, the sound filling the silence. Aizawa set his capture weapon aside and fixed him with that single tired eye. Midoriya. If something crossed the line, you tell me. Izuku finally looked up, but only just. His gaze flicked between the three of them, then dropped again. It doesn't matter. Today's session is done. You don't need to worry. Shinso frowned. Done? There's more session. Izuku's hand stilled on the page. For a moment he almost stayed silent. Then, low enough to sound like it hurt to admit, he muttered, 2 more days. That's the schedule they gave me. Hikari stiffened. 2 more days? They're putting you back in there? I can handle it. Izuku's reply came quick, almost rehearsed. His jaw was tight, his eyes shadowed. It's fine. The room held still. Aizawa exhaled slowly, scarf shifting around his shoulders. If you won't talk, I can't force it. But don't expect me to believe you're fine just because you say it. He turned away, his voice flat but edged. We start drills at 7 and you're not going back there tomorrow? Shinso muttered something under his breath but let it drop. Hikari lingered a moment longer, her green-gold eyes searching Izuku's face. He wouldn't look back. When they finally drifted away, Izuku released the breath he'd been holding. The pen trembled in his hand as he bent over the page again. 2 more days. I just have to survive 2 more days. The next day morning. The white room smelled faintly of antiseptic, the walls too clean, too bright. Izuku stood just outside the door, gloves tugged tight, while inside the officials arranged clipboards and equipment. Guards checked restraints. Aizawa was already there, scarf loose around his shoulders, jaw set. This ends today, he said flatly. 1 round of tests was already too far. He's a student, not a subject. The lead HPSC liaison adjusted his glasses, expression calm. You misunderstand, Eraserhead. Yesterday established baseline. Today we push boundaries, duration, volume variables. Otherwise we learn nothing. You've learned enough, Aizawa snapped. He lasted in the field against a Nomu. That's proof of control. What you're doing isn't about training, it's about seeing how much you can wring out of him before he breaks. The second official's voice was smooth, practiced. And what happens when he breaks in public instead? When the boy with absorption snaps mid-battle, surrounded by civilians? We can't afford uncertainty. We need data. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. You're not gathering data. You're pushing him into the same corner you claim you're protecting against. Better a corner under our eye, the man countered sharply, than an outbreak on national television. Do you remember the sports festival broadcast? The boy clinging to the Nomu like a predator? Do you think the public will forgive another spectacle without proof he's being contained? The word contained burned. Izuku flinched in the doorway but stayed silent. Aizawa stepped closer, voice dropping low. If you keep treating him like a monster, you'll make him one. The liaison didn't blink. And if you keep shielding him from accountability, you'll make him a liability. Decide, Eraserhead. Liability or supervised compliance. Because if UA won't provide it, the commission will relocate him somewhere that will. Aizawa's scarf twitched, but before he could answer, the second official raised a hand. This session is classified. Even for you. You may escort your other students on patrol. Midoriya remains here under our oversight. Aizawa froze. Classified? He's my responsibility. The man's smile was thin. And now he is ours. You'll receive a summary report after testing is complete. For a long moment, the air was taut, ready to snap. Then Aizawa exhaled through his nose, jaw tight. Fine. But know this, every note you take, every order you give, I'll be watching for the fallout. If he walks out of here broken, it's on you. This isn't over. The officials didn't flinch. One gestured toward the room. The guard stepped aside for Izuku. Izuku tugged at his gloves, heart pounding. Supervised compliance. Classified. Contained. The words rattled in his skull as he forced his legs to move, stepping inside alone. The sterile lights hummed overhead, brighter than yesterday. Izuku stood in the center of the room again, gloves peeled off, sleeves rolled tight. His stomach was already tight. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. The same 2 officials waited with clipboards. Guards lingered along the walls. Midoriya, one said smoothly, yesterday was promising. But a single second of contact isn't sufficient. Today we'll measure your sustained control. Longer transfers. Broader samples. Do your best. A prisoner was marched in, quirk-dampening cuffs still glowing faintly. His hands flickered with sparks when the cuffs were released. Izuku's throat went dry. He's terrified. They're using fear to bait me. The official's smile was polite, practiced. Touch. Maintain contact for at least 10 seconds. Izuku's fists clenched. He forced himself forward, brushing the man's arm. The surge hit, sparks flooding his skin, stinging his nerves. The man sagged almost immediately. Izuku yanked away at 4 seconds, jaw tight. Not long enough, the official noted. Again. The next subject was a woman with scales along her skin. I'm not training, Izuku thought bitterly as he brushed her wrist. I'm draining people in cages. He released her as fast as he dared. The official's voice stayed calm, clinical. Midoriya, if you wish to remain at UA, you must comply to a certain extent. We can only allow a student with your condition, so long as you demonstrate control under oversight. Otherwise you become a liability. The word echoed, liability. Izuku's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. They think this makes me safe? No, they're pushing me to act like the monster they already see. The test continued. One measured his reaction time, how fast he could absorb quirks one after another. Another forced him to touch two subjects back to back, recording how long fragments of each ability lingered before slipping away. By the third hour, his skin buzzed with half-faded quirks, his head pounding with memories that weren't his. He stumbled, catching himself on the chair's edge. Endurance is low, the second official murmured, jotting notes. We'll increase volume tomorrow. Prepare him for chemical induction. Izuku's breath hitched. Chemical? They're not just testing me. They're trying to rewire me. He tugged his gloves back on with trembling fingers, face blank. I'll be ready. But inside, the thought screamed louder with every test. This isn't training. This is wrong. And if I stay quiet, they'll keep doing it until I break. Izuku's room, night. He didn't want to see anyone not like this, so he went straight to him room. His notebook lay untouched on the desk, gloves still on his hands. He sat hunched on the bed, staring at the floor as if the grain in the wood might give him answers. A soft knock came. Izuku? It's me. He didn't answer. The knock came again, firmer this time. If you don't open up, I'm coming in. The door creaked open. Hikari slipped inside, closing it gently behind her. She crossed the room, her sharp green-gold eyes scanning him. You skipped dinner. Again. Izuku forced a shrug. Not hungry. She sat down on the edge of the bed, close but not crowding him. You've been locking yourself away since those sessions started. I'm not stupid. Something's happening in there. His hands curled tighter in his sleeves. It's fine. That's the same line you fed us yesterday. Her voice softened. Izuku, I'm asking you. Not as a classmate. As me. Please. For a moment he didn't move. Then his shoulders sagged, the smallest crack in his composure. They want me to keep going longer. 10 seconds. 20. Back to back. Different quirks, different people. His breath hitched, low and raw. They tell me if I want to stay at UA I have to comply. That I'm a liability if I don't. Hikari's eyes darkened. That's not training. That's... She stopped herself, pressing her lips into a thin line. What else are they making you do? Izuku shook his head quickly, retreating behind the wall again. That's all. Really. I can handle it. Silence stretched. His voice had the shape of truth but not the weight. She knew he was holding back. Hikari stood slowly. All right. If that's all you'll give me. She reached out, resting a hand briefly against his shoulder. Just, don't shut me out completely. When she left his room, her face hardened. She ducked into the hall, pulled out her phone, and hit a number she rarely used. The line clicked. Mom? Hikari's voice was low, urgent. You need to know what they're doing to him. The last day of internship. Izuku took a deep breath and exhaled. He was in lab standing in the middle of the white room. Today was the last day and he was just trying to get through it. Prisoners had already been shuffled in and out, quirks brushed from them with quick taps and longer holds that left Izuku feeling sick to his stomach. But now, a new cart rolled in, atomizers, vials of liquids that shimmered under the light, small metal canisters hissing faintly. We'll move to chemical exposure, the lead official said calmly, snapping on gloves. Liquids, aerosols, gas. We need to know if environmental factors influence absorption. Izuku's stomach turned. You're not spraying me. It's procedure, the man replied, pen scratching against paper. Please remove your jacket. No. Izuku's voice cracked but came out sharp. He hugged his sleeves tighter, fists trembling. I'm not taking anything off. And you're not spraying me. The officials exchanged looks, not surprised, not even angry. Just clinical. One made a small gesture. Guards shifted, ready to move in. The door slammed open. Absolutely not. Ms. Joke's voice cracked through the sterile air like a whip. She strode inside, green hair swaying, her grin gone, eyes sharp with fury. A folder of papers slapped against her hip. The official straightened, startled. This is classified. Wrong, she cut in. Her tone was razor bright. You're invoking the Hero Commission's oversight clauses, but you're forgetting Title IV of the Juvenile Quirk Regulation Act. Section 12B. Minors under institutional care cannot be subjected to non-medical quirk testing without guardian or faculty consent. She flipped a page, jabbing it at them. And since neither parent is here, that makes UA faculty the acting guardians. Meaning Eraserhead. Meaning me. You don't have consent. This entire setup is illegal. The officials bristled. National security overrides. Try again, Ms. Joke snapped. Section 15A. National security clauses only apply in cases of active criminality. Is Izuku Midoriya a criminal? No. Then your authority ends at observation, not experimentation. Izuku's heart hammered. For the first time in days, someone wasn't just arguing, they were fighting back with rules the suits couldn't twist. One official tried to recover, smoothing his tie. We have special dispensation. Show it, she fired back. Her smile returned, but it was sharp, mocking. Produce the signed dispensation, right here, right now. Otherwise your entire file is smoke. And believe me, I'll have no problem dragging this into court. Publicly. Silence. The hum of the lights filled the room. Finally, the lead official's jaw tightened. Suspend the chemical protocols. For now. The guard stepped back. The cart was wheeled out. Ms. Joke planted herself between Izuku and the officials, arms crossed. Good choice. Because here's the thing, this isn't just about Midoriya. You keep pushing boundaries like this, and the commission will find itself in front of a panel with Nizu, the press, and half the diet demanding answers. I'd love to watch you explain why you're experimenting on children while calling it training. The officials said nothing. Their pens hovered uselessly over their clipboards. Izuku sat frozen in the chair, shaking faintly, gloves limp in his hands. For the first time all week, someone had made them back down. Ms. Joke turned to him, her grin softer now, her voice low enough only he could hear. You're not a weapon, kid. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Let's go. HPSC headquarters, executive conference room, evening. The chamber was all steel and glass, the commission's insignia gleaming on the wall behind the long table. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead. A half-dozen liaisons in dark suits sat stiff, clipboards stacked like weapons. At the far end, Nizu perched calmly on a chair designed for someone twice his size, sipping tea. His expression was polite, unreadable. The doors opened sharply. Ms. Joke marched in, fury radiating off her in waves, Aizawa following with his scarf coiled tight. You've crossed the line, Ms. Joke said without preamble, dropping a thick binder onto the polished table. Chemical exposure on a minor? With prisoners as test subjects? You don't get to call that training. That's unlawful experimentation. The lead commissioner didn't flinch. Our mandate allows enhanced oversight for high-risk quirks. Midoriya qualifies. The protocols are within reason. Aizawa's single eye narrowed. Reason? He's not a criminal. He's a student. And you're trying to break him to prove you can control him. The commissioner steepled his fingers. And when his quirk breaks someone else, you'll answer for it. Before Aizawa could bite back, Ms. Joke leaned forward, voice sharp, words precise. Juvenile Quirk Regulation Act, Section 12B. Minors under institutional care cannot be subjected to invasive quirk testing without guardian or faculty consent. Neither was given. Section 15A. National security clauses only apply in cases of active criminality. Unless you want to file Midoriya as a criminal in your own system, you don't have jurisdiction for what you're doing. She flipped open the binder, shoving a marked page toward them. And before you try to bluff, I did pre-law in college. I know exactly how far your leash stretches. And this. She jabbed a finger at the paperwork. This is way past it. The room went tense. One commissioner tried to recover. We have special dispensation. Produce it, Ms. Joke cut in, her grin flashing sharp as a blade. Show us the signature. Right now. Otherwise, you're running black site experiments on a child without paperwork. Imagine how that headline would play, especially after the sports festival broadcast. Nizu's tail flicked against the chair leg as he set down his teacup. I can already picture it. Commission tortures festival champion. Rather unseemly. For the first time, the liaisons faltered. Their pens stilled. Finally, the lead commissioner exhaled, voice clipped. Suspend chemical protocols. For now. Midoriya remains under supervision, but the more invasive measures will be removed from UA's purview. Ms. Joke leaned back, arms crossed, satisfaction glinting in her eyes. Smart move. Because the next time you try this, you won't just be hearing from me, you'll be hearing from a courtroom. Aizawa's voice was low, a growl under the words. And if you push him again, you'll answer to me before any judge. Nizu's smile returned, serene and sharp. Then we're all in agreement. Midoriya's training will continue under faculty oversight. No cages, no chemicals. The silence from the commission was heavy, but they didn't argue. When the meeting adjourned, Ms. Joke finally let her grin soften as she glanced at Aizawa. See? Pre-law wasn't a waste. Aizawa grunted. Remind me to thank you later. Nizu sipped the last of his tea, black eyes glimmering. The commission blinked today. But they'll be back. Fear shapes futures after all, and theirs is shaped by losing control. Uedorm's common area night. The common room was quiet that night. The TV flickered with muted highlights of the day's hero patrols, but no one was really watching. Izuku sat slouched on the couch, gloves pulled tight, his notebook on his lap. His eyes were unfocused, pen unmoving. Hikari padded in barefoot, hair still damp from a shower, and dropped onto the couch beside him. Shinso followed a minute later, yawning, dragging a chair backward and straddling it lazily. Neither said anything at first. Then Hikari broke the silence. They made you do it, didn't they? Izuku's throat tightened. He didn't look at her, just stared at his gloves. Yeah, prisoners looking to do less time. A lineup. They wanted me to drain them longer again. Wanted my blood. Even talked about spraying me with chemicals. Until you mom came in and saved me. Hikari's hands balled into fists in her lap. That's not training. That's abuse. Shinso leaned forward, resting his chin on the chair back. Welcome to the wonderful world of villain kids. They don't train us. They poke, prod, and hope we don't explode in their faces. Izuku flinched at the word but didn't argue. He kept his gaze down, fingers tightening on the pen. I only tapped the majority of the time. Just enough to satisfy the suits. Though sometimes longer, which caused a few to PSD out. They didn't deserve any of that. He hesitated, voice dropping to a whisper. But I wanted to. Not them. The officials. Every second I wanted to touch them instead. The admission hung heavy in the air. Hikari reached out, her hand hovering over his gloved one, then resting gently. That doesn't make you a monster, Izuku. Makes you angry. And you have every right to be. Shinso's voice was low, almost approving. If you didn't want to, that's when I'd start worrying. Izuku swallowed hard, glancing between them. For the first time that day, the tightness in his chest eased just a little. Hikari offered a small, crooked smile. You're not in this alone. Not while we're here. Shinso gave a lazy shrug, but his eyes were sharp. Villain kids stick together, remember? Izuku's lips twitched. Not a smile, not yet, but something close. He tightened his gloves, pen finally scratching against paper again. The TV, still running in the background, cut abruptly from highlights to a breaking news banner. Hikari stiffened. Shinso lifted his head. Izuku's pen froze. And we interrupt this broadcast with footage recovered from Hosu. The anchor's voice rang out. The screen filled with shaky video. Stain, eyes blazing, his rasping voice echoing. Only the worthy may call themselves heroes. This society is rotting, filled with fakes and parasites. They do not deserve the title. Only those who truly save can stand above. The newsroom cut back to the anchor, tense. Authorities are analyzing the message, but its spread across underground forums has been rapid. And some have noted similarities to another young voice, Midoriya Izuku, during his sports festival declaration. The screen split. On one side, Stain's blood-stained face. On the other, Izuku standing in the arena, voice raw as it replayed. If the world won't change, I'll drag it, kicking and screaming, into something better. No one else will be abandoned, not the quirkless, not the outcasts, not the monsters. The common room went cold. Izuku's chest locked. He could feel Hikari's hand tense against his glove, Shinso's eyes cutting sideways to him. The anchor continued. Critics argue the boy's rhetoric mirrors the hero killer's ideology. Supporters claim he is the real successor to Stain's ideals, a more hopeful alternative. Either way, the comparisons are spreading. Izuku shot up, grabbing the remote and snapping the TV off. The silence that followed was deafening. His voice cracked. They're comparing me to him. Shinso leaned back slowly, lips twitching into a grim half-smile. You gave your speech first. He just gave you a bigger stage. Hikari turned to him, her eyes wide but steady. Izuku, whatever they say, I know you. You're not Stain. Yet, I agree with him, Izuku said abruptly. His voice was low, rough but clear. Hikari turned, startled. Izuku, I do. His eyes burned under the dim lights. About the fakes. About the system. The way it throws people like us away. He's right. Shinso's gaze narrowed, steady. But that's not all you believe. Izuku's jaw clenched. No. Killing heroes isn't enough. It doesn't fix anything. You kill 100 and the system makes 100 more. That's not saving people. That's just thinning the herd. He pulled at his gloves, voice harder now. Killing should be the last option. The very last. I want to save people. All of them. But I want lasting change to everything, not a temporary fix for one issue. Silence pressed close. Hikari stepped forward, fierce and certain. Then hold on to that. Don't let him drag you into his shadow. Shinso leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His voice was calm, almost tired, but it cut straight. She's right. You're not staying. But you need to understand something, Midoriya. Most of the world doesn't care about the difference. They'll hear your words and his side by side and decide you're the same. Izuku's throat tightened. That doesn't mean you stop, Shinso added, eyes sharp. It just means you stop expecting the system to treat you fairly. You already know it won't. Izuku let out a slow, shuddering breath. Then I'll keep trying their way. But if that fails, I'll fix it myself. And I'll lead the people they abandoned into something better. Neither Hikari nor Shinso argued. The weight of his words settled over the three of them. Not agreement, not rejection. Just reality. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Support the writer. Don't forget to like, sub, share, and donate for more videos.